In a distant memory, Naoto recalls meeting a blonde girl during his childhood, a hazy image that lingers in the back of his mind. Now, in the present, Naoto refuses to join any school clubs, insisting that he needs to go home right after class to take care of his little sister. As soon as he leaves the room, his classmates begin whispering behind his back, calling him a siskin for being overly protective of his fourth-grade sister. Unbeknownst to them, Naoto hears every word. Before he can reach the school gate, his friend Shigenobu stops him for a quick chat. He suggests that Naoto at least try joining a small social group instead of a club. But Naoto declines again, explaining that he has to take care of things at home, and even mentions that he's considering getting a part-time job. Just then, Yukari appears in front of them, her smile lighting up the hallway. She invites Naoto to join the committee meeting, though he tries unsuccessfully to hide his obvious crush on her. Despite his nervousness, he still turns down her invitation. Instead of looking disappointed, Yukari simply wishes him luck with his sister, playfully calling him Big Brother before walking away. Back home, Naoto prepares dinner for himself and Suzu. The own rice he serves looks messy, but Suzu devours it with unrestrained delight. After dinner, just as Naoto starts cleaning up, their Aunt Tamiyo arrives, looking as irritated as ever. She hands them their monthly allowance, and to Naoto's surprise, it's more generous than usual. Tamiyo explains that she's giving extra since it was Suzu's birthday last week. Then, with a strange look in her eyes, she mutters that it almost feels like she's handing money to her older brother. The comment sends a chill down Naoto's spine, and he can't help but wonder what exactly happened between Tamiyo and her late father. That night, the house grows quiet as everyone settles into sleep. The next morning, Suzu asks Naoto to help her with her hair. He agrees, but wonders aloud how long she plans to rely on him for everything. Suzu giggles, saying he has to take care of her until she's old, but her tone turns serious as she adds that it has to be that way, since it's just the two of them now. Her words make Naoto reflect on their situation. Their parents have both passed away, and for years they were shuffled from one relative to another. It's only been a month since they started living under Tamiyo's roof. Suzu reminds him of the time, and they head out together. On their way to school, she notices a small plant growing by the sidewalk, the same kind their mother used to grow. Moved by her smile, Naoto promises to buy her something after school to make up for not giving her a birthday gift. But as they walk, a mysterious blonde girl trails behind them. Though Naoto doesn't turn around, he feels her presence and quietly warns Suzu to go straight home after school. At school, Naoto feels a brief rush of happiness when he runs into Yukari again. His excitement, however, is quickly deflated when Shigenobu teases him, saying Yukari is out his league. He adds that she recently turned down a modeling offer, a testament to how perfect she seems. Then Shigenobu mentions that a new transfer student has arrived, someone unbelievably beautiful named Satsuki. The moment her name is spoken, Naoto's expression hardens. After school, the blonde girl, Satsuki, approaches Naoto and calls his name with eerie familiarity. He tries to ignore her, but she keeps following him even after he leaves the school grounds. Finally, he stops and turns around, asking what she wants, coldly calling her a garden crusher. Satsuki doesn't take offense. Instead, she smiles, pleased that he remembers her at all. She reintroduces herself and says it's been 6 years since they last met, and admits that she's been following him since her transfer. Naoto's patience wears thin. He reminds her how she destroyed his family's garden years ago, but she dodges the subject, apologizing only for stalking him. She says she wants to talk, but Naoto has no interest in hearing her out. Suddenly, Satsuki wraps her arms around him from behind, pinning him in place. But the moment she lets go, he bolts, forcing her to chase after him. Meanwhile, Suzu walks home thinking about what kind of birthday gift she'd like. She passes by a family working in a nearby field and feels a pang of nostalgia for when their parents were still alive and her family was whole. Just then, Naoto comes running up and grabs her by the arm, warning her not to make eye contact with Satsuki. When they finally reach home, Naoto catches his breath while Suzu, confused, asks who that strange girl was. Naoto doesn't answer. Instead, Suzu says she's decided what she wants for her birthday, to grow a garden with him. Naoto gently tells her it's impossible since they don't have land, but Suzu refuses to give up on the idea. At that moment, Tamiyo peeks out of her room and offers to let them use her yard. However, she warns that it's filthy and overrun with weeds. Naoto tries to refuse, but Tamiyo ends the discussion by slamming her door shut. They go outside to inspect the yard, and sure enough, it's exactly as she described. Still, they decide to make the best of it. Suddenly, Satsuki appears, holding a hoe. Naoto screams in shock, a sound loud enough for Yukari, who happens to be nearby to hear. Naoto instinctively shields Suzu as Satsuki approaches, insisting she only wants to talk. But Naoto's anger boils over, he accuses her of ruining his life. Satsuki freezes, clearly hurt, before suddenly stepping forward and pressing her lips against his in a full-on kiss. Both of them tumble to the ground right as Yukari, Suzu, and even Tamiyo witness the scene. Just when it seems like she'll pull away, Satsuki deepens the kiss. Naoto's head spins, his vision blurs. By the time she lets go, he's already unconscious beneath her. In his sleep, Naoto hears Satsuki's voice echoing in his mind, calling his name again and again. When he finally wakes, he's back in his room, struggling to process what happened. From the hallway, Tamiyo calls out, flatly warning him that if he plans to make out in the yard again, she'll throw him out. Later that morning, Naoto walks Suzu to school, trying to explain that he and Satsuki aren't even friends. But Suzu, hurt and confused, refuses to believe him. She declares she'll work on the garden alone and runs off ahead. Despite everything, she still doesn't recognize Satsuki from 6 years ago. At school, Yukari can't stop thinking about what she saw. She tries to shake off the image of Naoto and Satsuki kissing, but can't help wondering if they're actually a couple. Naoto approaches her by the lockers, apologizing for missing the previous committee meeting and saying he'll have to skip today's as well. Yukari smiles kindly, saying she admires how devoted he is to his sister. Most high schoolers, she notes, start drifting away from their families by his age. The moment is cut short when Satsuki appears out of nowhere. She walks right up to Yukari, eyes her chest, and bluntly remarks that she knows Naoto likes girls with bigger busts. Naoto nearly faints from embarrassment. Yukari stands frozen in disbelief as he hurriedly drags Satsuki away, muttering apologies. He corners her on the rooftop, demanding to know why she said that. Satsuki tilts her head, genuinely confused which part upset him. Then she pulls a familiar hoe from behind her and hands it to him, saying she forgot to return it 6 years ago. The moment he touches it, memories flood back of their time in Shinshu when they were neighbors. Back then, Satsuki would wander into his family's garden uninvited. Despite her odd behavior, they became friends, spending their days together tending plants, sharing snacks, and telling stories. But one day, without warning, she destroyed the garden they had built together and disappeared. Now, standing before her again, Naoto finally asks why she did it. Satsuki avoids the question, apologizing instead of the teasing grin, saying she can offer her body as compensation. Flustered, Naoto scolds her, especially for kissing him in front of Suzu. To his surprise, Satsuki's playful expression fades. She looks quietly disappointed, then walks away, leaving Naoto stunned and unsure why he suddenly feels like the one at fault. Back inside, he runs into Shigenobu and Yukari. Yukari avoids his eyes, and Naoto's stomach sinks. He's certain she now hates him because of Satsuki. After school, Naoto walks home, brooding over how his peaceful high school life has fallen apart. But his thoughts are cut short when he sees Suzu in Satsuki's arms, a scrape visible on her leg. Panicking, Naoto demands that Satsuki let Suzu go. She refuses, joking that she might just take Suzu away. Naoto raises the hoe in warning, ready to fight if he must. Satsuki simply smirks, saying he's not the type to hurt women or children. Naoto counters that if it's for Suzu, he'll do anything. His dramatic words leave both girls blushing in embarrassment. Suzu quickly explains that Satsuki helped her after she fell, and that she even promised to help with the garden. Relieved, Naoto lowers the hoe and agrees to let her stay. As they walk home, Satsuki casually mentions that the garden he thought was his actually used to belong to her. When they arrive, they find Yukari waiting out front, blushing slightly as she says she wanted to talk. The next day, Naoto helps Yukari shop for committee supplies since no one else could make it. Meanwhile, Suzu and Satsuki stay behind to work on the garden. Suzu sulks over Naoto choosing Yukari's company, so Satsuki invites her to go shopping too, hoping to cheer her up. At the store, Yukari takes the chance to ask Naoto about Satsuki. He quickly denies any romantic involvement, explaining she's just someone from his past. He nearly confesses his feelings for Yukari, but holds back. When they step outside, they run into Suzu and Satsuki. Suzu rushes over, clearly pouting that Naoto was with Yukari, but her mood softens when he hands her a small blue hoe of her own. She beams with happiness. Watching the siblings together, Satsuki quietly slips away. Yukari waves goodbye, giving Naoto a dazzling smile, then accidentally blurts out that she loves how dedicated he is. Flustered, she corrects herself and hurries off. Naoto and Suzu return home, only to find Satsuki waiting in the yard, smiling the same gentle smile she once had years ago. She teasingly calls his outing with Yukari a date and jokes that she wants one too. Naoto is taken aback, not only by her teasing but by the sight of the yard now spotless. Satsuki had cleaned everything herself. Then without warning, she begins changing clothes right there in the open. Naoto panics and rushes to stop her, and the two tumble to the ground, just as Tamayo walks in. Her face darkens instantly. Clearly at her limit, she glares at Naoto, ready to unleash her fury. After Tamayo storms off, Naoto and Satsuki quietly get up, instinctively putting some distance between each other. The tension from earlier lingers in the air, leaving Naoto uneasy. To clear his mind, he invites Suzu out for a walk, telling Satsuki to just head home. However, instead of leaving, Satsuki ends up following right behind them, claiming her house happens to be in the same direction. As they walk, she casually asks if they're planning to move out. Her question catches Naoto off guard, but he admits she's right, he and Suzu might be relocating again. He adds, almost wistfully, that he was hoping this time they'd get to stay in one place for a while. When he curtly tells her that his personal life isn't any of her business, Satsuki suddenly grabs his tie and yanks him to face her. With an unsettling calmness, she tells him she already knows what happened to his family. Uncomfortable with how close she's standing, Naoto hesitates, then finally opens up. As the sun sets behind them, he explains how he and Suzu ended up living with Tamayo. Their parents' marriage had never been accepted by either side of the family, and after their deaths, no one was particularly eager to take them in. They'd been passed around from one reluctant relative to another, and Tamayo was simply the next in line. Satsuki interrupts gently, suggesting that Tamayo might actually care more than she lets on. After all, she did allow them to use her yard for gardening. Then, as if to change the subject, Satsuki takes out several seed packets and hands them to Naoto. Before leaving, she tells him that if they do end up getting kicked out, he and Suzu can always come live with her instead. Later that evening, Suzu wakes up and realizes Tamayo is probably still mad at Naoto, given that they haven't come home yet. Suzu grabs his hand and makes him promise that wherever he goes, he has to take her with him. Meanwhile, inside, Tamayo finishes her shower and struggles to find her glasses until she spots her cat running off with them. She chases the feline through the hall and accidentally bumps right into Naoto, who had just arrived to apologize. Flustered, Tamayo quickly retreats into the bathroom the moment she realizes who she's run into. From behind the door, Naoto gets on his knees and pleads for more time. He explains that tending to the garden is now his and Suzu's responsibility and that it'll take time before they can enjoy any harvest. He only asks to stay long enough to see it through. Without warning, Tamayo opens the door, this time fully dressed, and tells him to hand over her glasses. Once she puts them on and sees him clearly, she bluntly asks if Satsuki is his girlfriend. Naoto immediately shakes his head. Satsuki, he says, is just a childhood friend. He adds firmly that he has no plans to get into a relationship. His only priority is taking care of Suzu. Just then, Suzu appears and asks if Naoto is finally done apologizing. Tamayo looks at her and says that if he's truly serious about caring for Suzu, then he should focus on the garden instead of fooling around with girls. Naoto's face lights up in her words, realizing that they imply he and Suzu are allowed to stay. Excited, Suzu invites Tamayo to help them in the garden, but Tamayo instantly refuses, saying she has no intention of doing any physical labor. That piques Naoto's curiosity. He recalls that their father once mentioned how he and Tamayo used to garden together. At the mention of her brother, Tamayo's mood darkens instantly. She snaps, ordering Naoto never to bring up her brother again. The next day, Satsuki joins Naoto and Suzu on their walk to school. Suzu cheerfully recounts everything that happened the day before, while Naoto quietly wonders why Satsuki keeps tagging along. Noticing his suspicious gaze, Satsuki teases him, lightening the atmosphere between the three of them. A few days later, the seeds they planted finally begin to sprout. Then his tone shifts. He brings up something more serious. He found Suzu's test results on her desk and is worried about her declining scores. Suzu suggests that he tutor her. With no real choice, Naoto agrees, though not without scolding her first and telling her to learn to be more independent. His words go in one ear and out the other as Suzu clings to him, insisting that since he'll be around to take care of her forever anyway, there's no need to worry. One day at school, Naoto realizes midterms are approaching. Yukari offers to study with him, but he declines at first, worried he'll only slow her down. Yukari smiles gently and asks him to at least think about it before walking off with a friend, leaving Naoto deep in thought. He tries not to read too much into it, but Shigenobu wastes no time teasing him about how close Yukari has been lately. Naoto brushes it off, saying she's just being polite, but the faint blush on his face betrays him. Once Shigenobu leaves, Naoto's expression darkens. He realizes Suzu probably wouldn't like the idea of him spending time alone with Yukari. Later that afternoon, heavy rain pours after school. Naoto, without an umbrella, watches his classmates leave one by one. Satsuki approaches and offers him an extra umbrella. When Naoto asks why she didn't walk with them that morning, she casually says she didn't want to interrupt his bonding time with Suzu and admits she actually followed them from 5 meters behind. She then teases him about sharing an umbrella, unaware that Yukari is hiding behind the lockers, listening. Unseen by either of them, Shigenobu also happens to witness the scene. When Naoto arrives home, he suddenly remembers that Suzu might have been stranded at school too. He rummages through her room for a raincoat, but instead finds a crumpled test paper hidden in her closet. To his surprise, it's a perfect score. Confused, Naoto wonders why Suzu would hide something like that. Before he can think further, Suzu walks into the room. Startled, he quickly stuffs the paper into his pocket. Suzu starts talking casually, mentioning that she walked her classmate Sato home because he forgot his umbrella. Naoto's tone subtly tightens as he responds. She instantly notices the change, but he brushes it off, claiming he needs to step out for a bit before abruptly leaving. Out in the rain again, Naoto berates himself. He realizes he should praise Suzu for her good grades, for her kindness, but he didn't. Until now, he's always thought of Suzu as helpless, someone who needed him for everything. His entire life has revolved around protecting her and keeping her happy. But now that she's starting to grow more independent, a strange uneasiness creeps in. Across the street, Naoto spots Satsuki, soaked from head to toe. It hits him that she must have lied about having a spare umbrella and had given her only one to him. Concerned, he grabs her wrist, but she brushes it off with a small smile, saying she must have misremembered. That only makes Naoto feel worse. Everyone around him seems to be pretending. He begins to realize that Suzu too might have been pretending, acting helpless so that he could feel needed. Satsuki notices his distant expression and gently reaches out to check on him. Naoto insists he's fine, but seeing how drenched she is, wordlessly takes off his jacket and drapes it over her shoulders. The gesture makes her blush faintly. He walks her home and is surprised to find her apartment so close to his own. But when she tries to open the door, the knob comes off completely. Naoto can't help but wonder what kind of parents would leave her in a place like this. Satsuki tells him to hurry inside and warm up, but when he hesitates, she grabs his hand and pulls him inside. Naoto resists, saying he needs to go home to Suzu, but Satsuki argues that Suzu is old enough to be left alone. Then, without warning, she accuses him of never prioritizing his own feelings, of living his entire life around Suzu's dependence. Naoto snaps, his voice rising as he scolds her for saying something so cruel. Satsuki only stares back, silent and unreadable. Her lack of reaction hurts more than he expects. He turns away, muttering that she doesn't understand the bond between him and Suzu, his voice trembling, almost as if trying to convince himself. Without another word, he leaves her standing there. Once he's gone, Satsuki slowly slides to the floor, cheeks flushed. In a quiet whisper, she tells herself that she does understand him. Outside, Naoto walks through the light rain, every step heavy with thought. His mind drifts back to Suzu. He finally begins to realize that his world has been built entirely around her, not just out of duty, but as a way to avoid everything else. Clubs, friendships, even his own growth. If he stopped centering his life around Suzu, maybe he could finally start thinking about Yukari. When he gets home, Suzu rushes to him, eyes filled with worry. She blames herself for his absence, but Naoto gently reassures her, offering sweets as a peace offering. He promises to come home earlier next time, and to bring more treats to make up for it. Suzu tears up, reminding him that he promised to tutor her, insisting she needs all of his time because she's not as smart as other kids. Naoto pulls out the test paper he found earlier. Her face freezes, then darkens. She snatches it, crumples it, and throws it away. He picks the paper back up and tells her she doesn't need his help if she can score that high. But Suzu insists it was a one-time fluke, that she still needs him for everything else. Before Naoto can answer, his vision suddenly blurs. The world spins and his legs give out. He collapses right in front of her. Suzu panics and rushes to call Tamayo. The next day, word spreads at school that Naoto is absent. At home, Suzu refuses to leave his side, clinging to him in bed despite his weak protests that she'll catch his cold. After much pleading, she reluctantly agrees to go to school. By midday, Naoto wakes again and immediately senses something's off. Sure enough, Satsuki is lying right next to him, watching him as if it's the most natural thing in the world. Startled, he tries to scold her, demanding to know how she even got in, but she ignores the question and apologizes for making him sick. She offers him medicine, but to his horror, it's a children's suppository. Naoto gapes, asking why she brought that instead of normal pills. Satsuki nonchalantly replies that it's the same kind his mother used to give him. The fact that she remembers such a weird detail makes his headache even worse. He tells her to go back to school, but she calmly notes that today only had morning classes, he's already slept past noon. She adds that she tried multiple ways to wake him up, teasing him about what those might have been. Before he can demand clarification, the doorbell rings. Naoto drags himself up and opens the door to find Yukari standing there worried. She asks if she can come in and cook something warm for him. Panicking, Naoto agrees, but his mind races. Satsuki is still in his room. As Yukari disappears into the kitchen, Satsuki announces she's leaving since she doesn't like seeing him with Yukari. Then, with a mischievous grin, she straddles him and teases that maybe he actually wants her to stay. Naoto freezes just as Yukari calls from outside his door, saying lunch is ready. In a panic, he shoves Satsuki under the blanket and dives in after her, doing his best to hide the suspicious lump. Yukari enters with a warm smile, setting a bowl of soup beside the bed, completely unaware. Naoto lies motionless, heart pounding, while Satsuki blushes beneath the covers, the room filled with unbearable tension. Naoto still can't believe he agreed to this. Hiding under the blanket had been Satsuki's idea, an idea that somehow made perfect sense to her at the time. According to her, if only Naoto's upper body was visible while she stayed completely hidden underneath, Yukari wouldn't suspect a thing. At least that was the plan. Things only get worse when Yukari notices a box of suppositories nearby. In a panic, Naoto blurts out that their Satsuki is trying and failing to sound casual. Meanwhile, Satsuki squirms beneath the blanket, struggling to get comfortable. Her movements push Naoto into an even more compromising position, practically under her now. She seems quite pleased with the arrangement, even hugging him tightly. Naoto breaks into a cold sweat, praying Yukari doesn't notice how strange the situation really is. Yukari leans in to check on him, placing a hand on his forehead. Thankfully, she doesn't seem to notice that his rising temperature has nothing to do with his cold. She reminds him to eat and drink before heading out, finally granting him some much-needed relief. As soon as she leaves, Satsuki stretches and grins, clearly proud of her success. Naoto, meanwhile, is still trying to recover from the sheer stress of it all. Watching him squirm, Satsuki eventually takes pity on him and decides not to tease him any further. While walking home, Yukari can't shake a vague sense of unease. Satsuki had visited Naoto before her. She tells herself not to overthink it. Naoto did say they were just childhood friends, but it still bothers her. Pausing by a small shrine, she clasps her hands together and quietly prays for Naoto's recovery. Back in his room, Naoto changes into fresh clothes and opens the food Yukari made him earlier. Inside the container is a dark, lumpy rice porridge staring back at him. To anyone else, it might look unappetizing, but to Naoto, it looks wonderful because Yukari made it. Determined to be optimistic, he scoops a big spoonful into his mouth, only to instantly regret it. The taste is an odd mix of overcooked rice and something vaguely metallic. Still, he keeps eating. It's from Yukari, after all. Spoonful after spoonful, he forces it down, determined to finish every last grain no matter how awful it tastes. Meanwhile, out in the garden, Satsuki tends to the plants while Suzu watches from nearby. Eventually, Satsuki calls her over to help. As they work, Suzu starts voicing her worries about Naoto. Distracted, she accidentally pulls out a basil plant, mistaking it for a weed since it was growing close to the tomatoes. Satsuki corrects her gently, explaining that basil and tomatoes are companion plants. They actually grow better together, protecting each other from pests. Suzu pauses, mulling over the thought a bit too long before suddenly announcing that she'll go check on Naoto. Just before leaving, she turns back and brings up something from years ago. She remembers how Satsuki once destroyed their garden as kids. Suzu had seen how upset Naoto was and even tried to chase Satsuki down for an explanation, but stopped when she saw her talking to a strange man before vanishing with him. When Suzu asks who the man was, Satsuki simply replies that there wasn't anyone with her. She quickly changes the topic, asking if Suzu ever mentioned that day to Naoto. After all, Naoto still believes Suzu doesn't remember Satsuki at all. Satsuki admits she ruined the garden out of anger. She and Naoto had fought the day before and she lashed out. It's something she's regretted ever since. That confession jogs Suzu's memory. She recalls cleaning up the garden with Naoto afterward and how she planned to tell him the truth, but didn't. Instead, she used that moment to grow closer to him, letting him depend on her, building something that belonged only to the two of them. The next morning, Suzu is surprised to find Naoto already awake and dressed. He says he's feeling much better and credits Yukari's porridge for curing him, though he admits he doesn't remember much after eating it. Then he notices Suzu's already prepared for school, even without his help. She tells him she's trying to be more independent, though she still wants to rely on him a little. At school, Naoto tries to thank Yukari properly, but she's always surrounded by people or busy with something. Some classmates notice and warn him not to get his hopes up. Yukari's out of everyone's league. She's polite but distant, and no one's ever gotten close. Shigenobu chimes in, saying he's known her since childhood. According to him, she's always had a way of attracting strange situations despite her calm personality. Naoto realizes that being pretty probably isn't as easy as it looks. On the way home, he sees Yukari turning down a group of guys. Assuming she already has a boyfriend, he quietly turns away. But Yukari notices him and walks over. Naoto finally gets the chance to thank her for visiting him. Just as he's about to leave, she suddenly invites him to a study session. He agrees on the spot, barely managing to contain his excitement. They find a quiet corner in the library and start working. In a rare moment of honesty, Naoto blurts out that he doesn't understand why she's so nice to someone like him. Yukari replies calmly, saying it's partly because he's a transfer student. Naoto feels a bit deflated until she adds that there's another reason. She tells him they've met before, long before he transferred. She explains that one day while staying late for club duties, she used an empty classroom to change out of her uniform. That's when Naoto suddenly burst in, demanding to know where his younger sister was. Completely ignoring her state of undress, he bombarded her with questions about Suzu, who had run off while he was handling transfer paperwork. When he realized she couldn't help, he left as abruptly as he came. Naoto is mortified. He doesn't remember it, but admits it sounds exactly like something he'd do when it comes to Suzu. Yukari, blushing, says she actually admires his dedication. She explains that Naoto feels different from the other boys she's met. Most only chase girls for shallow reasons. She even mentions the group of guys she rejected near the station, calling them that exact type. Sometimes, she says, men are too pushy, and it becomes frightening. That's why Naoto feels like a breath of fresh air. He's genuine and kind. Naoto feels a chill run down his spine as she trails off, then apologizes for rambling and excuses herself. On her way out, Yukari looks quietly pleased with how their talk turned out, until she spots Satsuki waiting near the library entrance. She wonders if Satsuki and Naoto had plans to meet, but Satsuki just smiles and says she's waiting for him because she wants to. Yukari nods and walks off without another word. Later that evening, Naoto eats ramen with Shigenobu and tells him about what Yukari said. Naoto thinks it was her subtle way of saying he shouldn't see her romantically. Shigenobu disagrees, insisting it might mean the opposite. Naoto doesn't catch on and instead vows to keep his thoughts pure so Yukari won't think badly of him. Suddenly, Satsuki appears out of nowhere, telling him he should just be himself. That night, Naoto reviews his notes from the study session. His classmates' comments echo in his mind, and though he tries to focus, he can't help imagining Yukari. He scolds himself, trying to push the thought away, but then Satsuki's face appears in his mind, which somehow feels even worse. He recalls the blanket incident and, against his better judgment, wonders what it would have been like if Yukari had been the one there instead. Immediately, he snaps out of it, horrified by his own thoughts. Muttering an apology to no one in particular, he freezes when he realizes Suzu, sleeping beside him, is now wide awake, glaring at him in quiet disappointment. Panicking, he stammers an excuse and flees to the bathroom. Meanwhile, at Yukari's house, she's taking a shower when her thoughts drift towards Satsuki. The way Satsuki seems so comfortable around Naoto keeps bothering her. She wonders if they're really just childhood friends or something more. Still, she decides to believe in Naoto. She tells herself she just needs to be braver, so that one day she can confess her feelings properly. The next morning, Naoto waters the plants in the yard, looking utterly drained. Suzu, tending to another patch of vegetables, complains to Satsuki that he's been acting weird since yesterday. Curious, Satsuki calls out to him, but Naoto, startled, accidentally sprays her with the hose. Drenched, she sits on the ground, blinking in shock as Naoto panics and backs into a corner, muttering to himself not to look. Suzu and Satsuki exchange a look, then agree to just leave and be. At school, Satsuki teases Naoto about his absent-mindedness, saying it's probably Yukari related. He tells her to stay out of it, clearly flustered. Offended, she reminds him she's the one who got ignored all morning and soaked, thanks to his weird behavior. Naoto apologizes, then suddenly realizes something. She'd mentioned doing laundry at his place before class, which means some of her clothes might still be drying. Satsuki just grins, brushing it off, saying she'll manage since it's only exam day anyway. When Yukari arrives and greets Naoto, he instantly panics, insisting he wasn't talking to Satsuki. But she's already walking off toward her classroom. Yukari comments on his heavy eye bags as they walk, but before he can respond, a sudden gust of wind sweeps through the hall, lifting several skirts. Without thinking, Naoto lunges forward and hugs Satsuki tightly to keep her skirt from flying up. The hallway falls silent. To everyone watching, including Yukari, it looks like a bold, public display of affection. Realizing what he's done, Naoto lets go immediately, stumbling to explain, but Yukari's expression has already darkened. Without a word, she turns and walks away. Naoto collapses in despair, blaming Satsuki for ruining everything again. Calmly, Satsuki mentions that she's actually wearing some of his clothes since hers were still drying. He didn't even need to help her. Then, with a faint smile, she thanks him for trying to protect her anyway. A week passes and Yukari barely speaks at him. Frustrated, Naoto vents to Shigenobu and Satsuki, only for Shigenobu to drop another bomb. There's a rumor going around that Naoto and Satsuki are dating. Naoto feels even more hopeless, especially since his long-awaited hangout with Yukari never happened. Seeing his slump, Shigenobu suddenly declares that what Naoto needs is a distraction. He announces a beach trip for the weekend, open invite. Even Yukari gets one. She initially agrees, but upon hearing that Naoto will be there, she hesitates. Still, Shigenobu promises to handle all the details. All they have to do is show up. After class, Naoto starts worrying about the upcoming beach trip. Things between him and Yukari are still awkward, and spending 2 days together might only make it worse. On top of that, he assumes Suzu will get lonely or worry about him while he's away. After thinking it through, he decides the easiest solution is to bring Suzu along. But when he gets home, Suzu tearfully informs him that she'll be going on a 2-day school beach trip. Naoto hides his relief and praises the news, saying it's great she won't miss out on school activities. He also mentions that he'll be away for a beach outing himself. They both pause, realizing neither of them will be home to water the garden. After thinking it over, they agree to ask Tamayo for help. Suzu makes him promise not to forget about her while they're apart. He reassures her he won't, and in return, she makes him promise to take her swimsuit shopping the next day. The following day, Naoto regrets making that promise. Thankfully, Satsuki offers to come along since she also wants to buy one herself. Naoto hesitates but agrees, better that than shopping for girls' swimwear alone. Shigenobu, standing nearby, casually suggests she should join them. Yukari refuses, saying she overheard a rumor that Naoto and Satsuki are already dating. Shigenobu questions it, reminding her that unless she heard it directly from Naoto, it's just a rumor. When Yukari hesitantly admits she's thinking of backing out of the beach trip, Shigenobu recalls their middle school days and encourages her to at least talk to Naoto first. Encouraged by his words, Yukari decides to run after them. At the department store, Naoto is immediately overwhelmed by the number of swimsuit options. Satsuki and Suzu each pick out bold pieces and ask for his opinion. Trying not to let his thoughts run wild, Naoto keeps his answers short, insisting they just pick what they like. Satsuki playfully shows off her size, while Suzu subtly fishes for compliments. Flustered, Naoto tells Suzu to choose something with more coverage, then quickly turns away, saying he'll go find his own beachwear instead. Unbeknownst to them, Yukari watches quietly from a distance. A sales lady approaches and asks if she's looking for something, reminding her that she still needs a new swimsuit too. Yukari initially asks for something simple and modest, but after seeing Satsuki's choices, she quickly changes her mind and requests something just a little bolder. The attendant selects a 2-piece that perfectly flatters her figure. Yukari, suddenly self-conscious, asks for another option. The sales lady smiles and agrees, casually asking if the boy she wants to impress has any particular preferences. Yukari's expression darkens as she pictures Satsuki. Hesitantly, she describes Satsuki's appearance. The sales lady's eyes light up and she eagerly takes Yukari's hands, declaring that she'll transform her into the boy's type. Soon enough, Yukari is fitted with long hair extensions and a bolder swimsuit that leaves her more embarrassed than ever. She fidgets awkwardly, unaware that Naoto has spotted her from across the store. He stares, clearly captivated, but fails to realize the girl he's looking at is Yukari herself. Naoto returns to the dressing area where Suzu and Satsuki are still trying on their swimsuits. Suzu calls out, asking him to help with something on her back. Naoto casually opens one of the curtains, only to realize too late that it's Satsuki's side and she's just stepped out of her swimsuit. Satsuki yanks the curtain shut with a chilling glare. Moments later, Suzu emerges, cheerfully announcing that she managed to get dressed on her own, oblivious to the tension in the air. Shortly after, Satsuki storms out of her booth, completely ignoring Naoto. Confused, Naoto tries to follow and apologize. When he gently grabs her hand, Satsuki turns on him, flustered and red-faced. Naoto is stunned. Satsuki had always been confident and teasing before. When he points this out, Satsuki snaps that it's different when it's unintentional. For a brief moment, things feel strangely intimate, and Naoto finds himself shaken by the sudden change. Meanwhile, Yukari finishes paying for her swimsuit and looks around for the others. She spots Naoto and Satsuki standing unusually close and quickly hides behind a corner. Satsuki notices her, but says nothing. Later on the train ride home, Satsuki asks why Naoto never badmouthed her to anyone. If he had, maybe she wouldn't have been invited and Yukari wouldn't have misunderstood. Naoto simply replies that their issues are between them. Half asleep, Suzu overhears and invites Satsuki to sit closer, but Satsuki declines, saying she's fine where she is. She's content just watching Naoto from afar, promising to step in only when he needs her. Naoto listens, unsure whether that's her way of making up for destroying the garden, or if she means something deeper. He reflects on their relationship. It's too tense to be called friendship, yet too familiar to be distant. They had once been close as kids, but things ended on bad terms. Even now, he hasn't completely forgiven her. When they finally reach their stop, they find Yukari waiting nearby. Without hesitation, she asks if he and Satsuki are dating. Naoto tries to clear up the misunderstanding, but Yukari insists he must be hiding something. She brings up the intimate moments she witnessed, including the kiss in the yard. Caught off guard, Naoto scrambles for an explanation. He realizes the situation has spiraled too far, and any hope of getting closer to Yukari feels impossible now. Seeing his panic, Satsuki steps forward to face Yukari. She claims the kiss meant nothing, calling it a cultural greeting. To prove her point, she leans in and plants a simple kiss on Yukari's cheek. Naoto nearly jumps in shock, while Yukari stares, speechless. Satsuki calmly explains that she's willing to kiss anyone, that it holds no special meaning, not even with Naoto. Eventually, Yukari, still flustered, accepts the explanation. Just then, Suzu wakes up, groggily complaining about being thirsty, prompting them to stop by a vending machine. Yukari tries to convince herself that the kiss was meaningless. After all, Satsuki's a girl. Still, she's too flustered to think straight and excuses herself. Before she leaves, Naoto stops her, reassuring her once more that he and Satsuki are just childhood friends. He adds that he's really looking forward to the beach trip with her. Yukari brightens with relief and smiles, admitting she's looking forward to it too. At the beach, Satsuki is left speechless by the sight of the ocean, while Naoto can't take his eyes off Yukari. In the changing room, Yukari's friends gush over her swimsuit. Though nervous, she wonders what Naoto will think of it. They notice Satsuki has already left the room. Remembering yesterday's events, and now certain Naoto and Satsuki aren't dating, Yukari dares to think she might finally have a chance to get closer to him. Meanwhile, Naoto finds it difficult to function without Suzu, but decides to use this trip as an opportunity to get closer to Yukari. When his classmates invite him to hang out, he awkwardly agrees. It's his first time doing something that feels like a normal high school experience. He reminds himself that this trip is supposed to be fun, a chance to bridge the gap with Yukari. But every time he tries to approach her, she's surrounded by people. Frustrated but determined, he steels himself and decides he'll just have to push a little harder. His train of thought is cut short when he hears someone yelp in pain. Turning his head, he spots Satsuki gripping a guy's wrist in an iron hold. His classmates quickly explain that she's been getting hit on since they arrived. Worried things might escalate, Naoto strides over, grabs her by the collar of her parka, and drags her away before she can cause more trouble. Once they're alone, he tries to scold her for picking a fight instead of asking for help, but Satsuki completely ignores him and gestures to her swimsuit, asking what he thinks. When he refuses to answer, her mood soars. She folds her arms and demands to know why he isn't spending time with Yukari if that's what he came for. Trying to change the subject, Naoto asks what she plans to do since everyone else is already swimming. Satsuki hesitates before admitting she doesn't know how to swim. It's her first time at the beach, she's never gone with her family, and she always skips swim class. Naoto blinks in surprise. He realizes there's still so much about Satsuki he doesn't know. She admits softly that today at least she wants to try getting into the water. Naoto tells her she should, but insists she go with someone else, just to be safe. Right then, Shigenobu appears, handing Naoto a note and explaining that he and Yukari have a few things to buy. He offers to introduce Satsuki to the other girls in their class. Before heading off, Naoto promises Satsuki he'll join her in the water later. She smiles warmly, and Shigenobu silently observes her reaction with curiosity. When Naoto meets up with Yukari, he awkwardly avoids eye contact. Yukari, misrating his behavior, assumes her swimsuit doesn't suit her. To distract himself, Naoto pulls out the note, only to find it just says to have lunch together. While Naoto and Yukari are away, Satsuki spends time with Shigenobu. She admits she doesn't get along with girls and prefers watching from the sidelines. Curious, Shigenobu asks if she's in love with Naoto. Satsuki admits she is, but quickly adds that she has no desire to be his girlfriend. Satisfied, Shigenobu says he'll keep rooting for Naoto and Yukari. He also reveals that he's decided not to pursue Yukari anymore. Meanwhile, Naoto and Yukari stroll through rows of food stalls trying to decide what to eat. Naoto wonders aloud if Yukari might prefer something light and sweet like shaved ice. Yukari smiles at the thought, joking about how it'll dye her tongue, and playfully sticks it out, making Naoto's heart skip a beat. After thinking for a moment, she suggests getting something more filling first and points out stalls selling meat skewers. She adds that they could grab shaved ice afterward and share one together. Later, she returns holding several sticks of yakitori. The vendor gave her extra, and they sit on nearby steps to eat. Naoto feels incredibly lucky to be spending this moment with her. Their peaceful meal is occasionally interrupted by passing beachgoers. A few guys make comments about Yukari, even trying to talk her into ditching Naoto. Yukari tries to ignore them, but it clearly bothers her. Thankfully, Naoto picks up on it and suggests they head back to their classmates. He gently takes her by the hand. As they walk, Yukari nervously asks him to let go. He does, apologizing, then awkwardly compliments her swimsuit, quickly adding that he hopes he doesn't sound creepy. Yukari smiles and says it actually makes her happy to hear that from him. Suddenly, Yukari hears a familiar voice. She turns and spots Soichiro, a senior from school. He greets her briefly, compliments her, then walks off. Something about the encounter unsettles Yukari. She tells Naoto she wants to return to the hotel to rest. Back at the beach, Shigenobu starts to worry when Naoto hasn't returned. His concern deepens after overhearing some girls gossiping about a sighting of Soichiro nearby. Naoto gets information from the girls in his class that Yukari used to date Soichiro, but they had broken up when Soichiro graduated high school. The information slightly bothers Naoto, and Shigenobu suggests that he just ask Yukari instead of relying on what other people say. Naoto trudges back to the hotel only to find Soichiro looking around near the entrance. Soichiro spots him and asks about Yukari's whereabouts, so Naoto replies that Yukari has returned to her room and that Soichiro might need to ask for assistance from the staff. They introduce themselves to each other, and Soichiro even hands Naoto some snacks for sharing before entering the hotel in front of him. Naoto can't help but feel intimidated as Soichiro seems like the type of guy Yukari would still be into and genuinely seems very nice. He then hears Satsuki's voice behind him and quickly remembers that he had promised to go swimming with her earlier. He quickly apologizes. Satsuki accepts the apology and grabs Naoto's hand and plants it on her chest, teasing him that it's a gift to cheer him up. She then enters the hotel, leaving Naoto flustered outside. Meanwhile, Soichiro manages to find Yukari, and they begin walking around the hotel garden while talking. Soichiro tells her that he wants to have a fresh start and invites her to dinner so they can talk longer. When he leaves, Satsuki shows up and tells Yukari that Shigenobu wants her to know that the class will all be having dinner together and that Naoto has been stressing over her relationship with Soichiro. They hear Naoto and some boys talking nearby, apparently discussing Satsuki's availability. Some of the boys say she seems easy to get, but Naoto suddenly defends her. Satsuki blushes at his words but doesn't reveal that she and Yukari are overhearing. Yukari then tells Satsuki that she has other plans for dinner. When asked if it's with Soichiro, Yukari clarifies that Soichiro isn't her boyfriend and that she hasn't ever dated anyone. She then walks off, remembering the time she turned down Soichiro back in high school. Later, while waiting for the class, Satsuki informs the girls that Yukari won't be joining them. The girls get giddy at the idea that Yukari might get back with Soichiro, but Satsuki tells them Yukari denied ever dating him. Before the girls can argue further, Shigenobu enters the hotel and informs everyone that their classmates have already gone ahead to the restaurant. The girls quickly leave while Naoto, having overheard everything, grows more curious as Satsuki and Shigenobu talk. During dinner with Soichiro, Yukari thanks him for the time, but hurtful memories of their past begin to resurface in her mind. Despite turning him down back then, Soichiro had acted like they were dating, so much so that Yukari couldn't refuse spending time with him, especially since everyone around them already assumed they were a couple. One winter, just before Soichiro's graduation, Yukari had tried once more to turn him down. But Soichiro told her that he would still pursue her, even after finishing school, and that they could meet up again someday. Back in the present, Yukari brings up that winter day. She admits she didn't think he would follow through, especially since he never contacted her again after he left school. Soichiro explains that he was planning to wait for her to graduate before reaching out. Yukari then tells him that she's interested in someone else. Soichiro asks if the person she likes has eyes only for her. His question unsettles Yukari, and she abruptly gets up and leaves the restaurant. Back at the hotel, Naoto and Satsuki hadn't joined the rest of the class for dinner. They're both surprised when Soichiro walks into the hotel lobby without Yukari. Soichiro looks equally surprised to see them still there and says that Yukari had left dinner with him early. He hands them a note that Yukari had left with the restaurant staff. In it, Yukari had written that she would be walking back by herself. Satsuki reads the note and tells Naoto and Soichiro that Yukari probably doesn't like Soichiro that much and couldn't stand being with him. Just then, Shigenobu arrives, having come to check on Naoto and Satsuki since they hadn't shown up. Naoto decides to tell them about Yukari, and Shigenobu offers to help find her. He tries calling Yukari, but Soichiro informs them that she won't pick up since he had already tried. To everyone's surprise, Yukari answers Shigenobu's call. He tells the group that she took a wrong turn but is on her way back to the hotel. Then, turning to Soichiro, Shigenobu politely but firmly tells him that Yukari is still uncomfortable around him and that it would be best if he left. Soichiro nods in understanding and leaves, saying he'll see Yukari in the morning. Once he's gone, Shigenobu admits to Naoto and Satsuki that he had lied and Yukari isn't coming back. He only managed to get her location. He then hands Naoto his phone and tells him to go find her. Naoto hesitates, admitting he doesn't know what to say. He turns to Satsuki, unsure, but Shigenobu insists that he go alone. He urges him to hurry, reminding him that it's not safe for a girl to be out alone at night. Naoto eventually rushes out to look for Yukari, while Shigenobu quietly wonders if he made the right choice by sending Naoto alone. Satsuki, a little frustrated, decides to go take a bath, still annoyed that Naoto had given her such a helpless look over his love problems with another girl. Meanwhile, Naoto tries calling Yukari using Shigenobu's phone. Yukari picks up, surprised to hear Naoto's worried voice on the other end. She tells him not to worry and says he can head back to the hotel. She just wants some time alone to think while looking out at the ocean. She doesn't realize that Naoto already knows where she is and is only a few meters away. Though he can already see her, Naoto gently asks over the phone if she'd be willing to open up more. As he explains that she doesn't have to hide how she feels anymore, Yukari finally looks up and sees Naoto standing right in front of her. As he walks closer, Naoto admits he doesn't like hearing her sound so sad. Yukari hesitates, then brings up Satsuki, saying there's still a part of her that doesn't fully believe nothing is going on between them. She nearly confesses her true feelings to him, but stops herself and turns to run away. However, she trips and falls, and when she looks at her shoes, she notices that her heel has broken. Naoto immediately rushes to her side, noticing that she's crying. Without hesitation, he offers her a piggyback ride, reassuring her that he won't drop her since he's used to carrying Suzu around anyway. Blushing, Yukari shyly says she's heavy, but Naoto insists that it's fine. With her on his back, they begin the quiet walk back to the hotel. Embarrassed but trying to keep things calm, Naoto asks if there's something wrong with Soichiro that made her avoid him. Yukari asks to be put down so she can explain. Once back on her feet, she confesses that she and Soichiro never really dated. Everyone just assumed they were together, and she had been too much of a coward to correct them. Taking a deep breath, she finally says she wants to change. She wants to speak up more when people do things she doesn't like. In a softer voice, she adds that she wants to find the courage and words to confess her feelings to the person she truly loves. Naoto, unaware that she's talking about him, smiles and tells her she should, and that he'll be there to support her no matter what. Yukari turns to face him. She says she admires him and admits that she overheard the conversation he had with the boys about Satsuki. She had admired how he defended her. She says she hopes to have the same courage he showed earlier, because she's always been someone who's afraid of what others think. Yukari tries to find the courage for one more attempt to confess, but just as the words are about to leave her mouth, they're interrupted by the sudden arrival of Soichiro, who had apparently gone up to look for her with some of their classmates. Shocked, Yukari quickly tries to hide herself behind Naoto, and he immediately notices how uncomfortable she looks. Sensing the tension, Naoto takes the chance to finally clear things up. He tells everyone that Yukari had never dated Soichiro. The crowd goes silent for a second before the murmurs start, with some classmates immediately accusing Naoto of being rude and stirring trouble. Soichiro wears a confident smirk as he brushes off the comment and confidently states that he and Yukari are a couple. He even turns to Yukari and invites her to tell everyone herself about their relationship, thinking she'll fall in line like always. For the first time, Yukari stands up straight and says that she was never Soichiro's girlfriend. She never agreed to go out with him and only stayed silent out of fear or confusion. She even adds that she never wants to see him again. Soichiro, caught off guard, sweats nervously and accuses her of losing her mind. He steps closer, trying to regain control, but Yukari continues to tell him off by saying he never listens. That's when he reaches out and grabs her wrist, his smile faltering. Before he can say or do anything more, Satsuki appears out of nowhere and kicks him hard in the back, calling him a jerk as he stumbles forward. He glares at her, but before he can insult her, Satsuki coldly asks for Shigenobu's phone. She declares that she's filing a report for stalking. This clearly rattles Soichiro. He threatens to call the police instead, saying they assaulted him. Still shaken, he finally backs off from Mao and tells Yukari that he's disappointed since he thought she would just go along with everything. Later at the hotel, Yukari's friends apologize to her for believing Soichiro all this time. Yukari reassures them, saying that it was partly her fault too for not correcting them when she should have. Shigenobu remains slightly worried, pointing out that Soichiro had only promised to leave her alone for today. But Yukari assures him that next time she'll be able to stand her ground. Shigenobu gives her a proud smile before turning to Naoto. Noticing how much closer the two seem since returning, he casually asks if something happened between them. Meanwhile, Satsuki returns Shigenobu's phone after noticing something on it. He pauses when he sees the screen and asks if she saw the caller ID. She nods but shrugs it off, saying it's none of her business. A bit later, while Satsuki's buying drinks at a vending machine, Yukari approaches her and thanks her for stepping in earlier. Satsuki says she only did it for Naoto's sake, since he looked like he didn't have a plan at all. Yukari chuckles and says that even if Naoto didn't have a plan, he helped her by simply listening. That support lifted a huge weight from her shoulders and inspired her to be honest with herself. She adds that she wants to do the same for him one day, accept him for who he is, flaws and all. Satsuki gives her an unimpressed look, so Yukari decides to be more direct. She admits that once the trip is over, she plans to confess to Naoto. Satsuki, still bored, simply tells her to confess if she wants. Before walking away, Yukari promises not to lose to Satsuki. Once alone, Satsuki takes a seat and sips her drink. Naoto soon walks up in front of her, holding out a bag of rice balls. As they eat, Satsuki casually mentions that his relationship with Yukari seems to be improving. Naoto agrees and also mentions that Satsuki is about to get popular with the guys in his class and even getting along well with Shigenobu. But Satsuki cuts him off, saying she's not interested in any other human, only him. She wants to understand why he's still so kind to her, even though he doesn't feel the same way, especially after what she did to the garden 6 years ago. Without warning, she kisses him. Then, quietly but firmly, she tells him not to be nice to her anymore because if he is, she might end up destroying something important to him again. Naoto is back at home from his beach trip, but his conversation with Satsuki still lingers fresh in his mind. He wonders what Satsuki was referring to. He recalls that the day before Satsuki had wrecked the garden, she had come over to hang out. They had been watching a romantic drama together when the main couple decided to run away. Feeling as if it was a good idea, Naoto had suggested that he and Satsuki do the same. They started making their way through their simple town and toward the next one. The walk had been long and Satsuki was visibly tired. She had pleaded for Naoto to slow down, and that was when Naoto finally took notice of her exhausted expression. However, Satsuki refused to admit she was fatigued and asked Naoto to take her even further away. The two continued their journey, promising each other that they would stay together no matter how far they went. Eventually, their little game of running away had to end when the sun went down. They returned to Naoto's house where his parents were already waiting. His parents offered to take Satsuki home since it was late, but Satsuki refused and turned to leave. When Naoto called out to bid her goodbye, she turned to look at him. But his memory is hazy, and he can't remember the expression on her face. While he struggles to remember, Suzu comes running up and tackles him, thrilled to finally be home with him again. They lie down together on the Ngala, basking in the calm breeze and the quiet comfort of each other's presence. Suzu gazes at their overgrown garden and casually remarks that they'll need to clean it up tomorrow. Naoto quietly wonders if Satsuki will come over to help like she used to. The next morning, Yukari practices confessing her feelings to Naoto in front of a mirror. She gets flustered by her own reflection, but quickly remembers the promise she made to Satsuki that she'll finally confess to Naoto. Even so, the nerves get to her, and she realizes she probably isn't ready to confess. Meanwhile, Satsuki steps out of her apartment and is caught off guard to find Naoto standing right in front of her. He asks why she didn't show up to tend the garden that morning. Satsuki fires back, asking if that's really the only reason he came. Naoto panics a little but insists that she should keep her promises, especially since she had been helping out every morning before school. Satsuki stares at him for a beat before calmly saying she expected him to yell at her for kissing him 2 days ago. She confronts him directly, asking if he didn't feel anything about those kisses. When he confirms that he did, she leans in, pressing further if he actually likes being kissed by her. She always thought Naoto harbored at least some resentment toward her. Naoto argues that he doesn't hate Satsuki. He admits he was upset about the garden, but what confused and hurt him even more was the fact that she disappeared right after and didn't speak to him again. Satsuki's expression stays unreadable, which only frustrates Naoto more. The entire ordeal had traumatized him as a kid, and her silence left a lasting mark. She asks if he was scared she'd disappear again because she hadn't shown up at the garden that morning. She tries to press further, trying to understand if Naoto still has feelings for her. But Naoto firmly denies it. He tells her that whatever feelings he had were left behind in the past. Hearing this, Satsuki's expression hardens. She turns away, saying she wants nothing more to do with him, and walks off in the opposite direction from the school. As she disappears from view, Naoto notices a strange aura behind him. He turns and sees Suzu standing there looking serious. She tells him that they need to talk after school. At school, Yukari is the first to greet Naoto and shyly asks if they can talk. She brings him to a quiet area of the school and finally thanks him for the help he gave her during the beach trip. She fidgets, gathering the courage to confess. But before she can say anything, a few of her admirers show up and try to get her attention. As Yukari awkwardly waves them off, some of her friends casually explain to Naoto that now that Yukari is confirmed to be single, she'll be swamped with confessions for a while. Naoto listens but can't help thinking back to the beach trip and how his original plan was to grow closer to Yukari. Technically, it worked, but now he isn't sure what kind of relationship he really wants with her. Meanwhile, Satsuki skips school and lies on a riverbank, resting with her eyes closed. Shigenobu finds her, asking if she's okay. Satsuki surprises him by opening up about her feelings for Naoto and how part of her still hopes she can get what she wants. Intrigued, Shigenobu asks what exactly it is that she wants. Satsuki gives him an answer meant for his ears only. Shigenobu stares at her in shock. Satsuki then adds that what she wants could never be understood by Naoto or even Shigenobu. But Shigenobu replies softly that he thinks he understands at least a part of it. Later, Naoto sees Satsuki and Shigenobu arriving at school together. He wonders if something's going on between them. Even though Satsuki once said she wasn't interested in Shigenobu, Yukari tries to call out to Naoto, but he doesn't notice. He keeps walking, lost in his thoughts. She wonders if she'll ever get the timing right to tell him how she truly feels. At the end of the day, Yukari checks her reflection one more time, steals herself, and finally approaches Naoto, asking if he wants to walk home together. Moments later, the school announcement calls for her club, and she suddenly remembers they're scheduled to clean the pool. Naoto senses that Yukari isn't herself today. Later, he finds her changing inside the boys' locker room. Before he can call out to her, he notices a group of boys approaching and quickly enters the room, closing the door behind him. Yukari fumbles with her words, clearly flustered by her state of undress. Naoto informs her that she's in the wrong changing room. Once the realization sinks in, she freezes in embarrassment. Naoto tries to buy her some time by keeping the door shut as the boys outside try to force their way in. Eventually, they give up and decide to change near the pool instead. Yukari collapses to the ground, relieved but humiliated. Naoto crouches down to check on her, but quickly turns his back when he notices her appearance. Before he can leave, Yukari calls out to him and asks him to stay with his back turned. She says she has something important to tell him. While changing, she begins to talk about their first meeting and how it's ironically similar to today. Once she's done dressing, she approaches him, her confession ready on her lips. However, the door suddenly swings open and Naoto falls on top of her. He quickly apologizes, but Yukari manages to blurt out her confession before standing up and running away, leaving Naoto stunned and flustered. As Naoto walks toward the school gates, he finds Yukari waiting for him. He awkwardly says he'll see her tomorrow, unaware that she just confessed to him. Yukari grows confused when he doesn't acknowledge her feelings, and it's only then that Naoto realizes what she said earlier. Embarrassed, Yukari tells him he doesn't have to answer right away and turns to run, only to bump into a wall. She forces a small smile to reassure him before dashing off again. Naoto is left speechless, realizing his crush had actually confessed to him. When he returns home, Suzu is already waiting and asks if anything happened at school. Naoto says nothing did, but Suzu shifts the topic, asking if he and Satsuki are okay. Naoto grimaces, recalling that Satsuki had told him she wanted nothing to do with him. Suzu gently says she doesn't think Satsuki really hates him. She adds that she's grown fond of Satsuki too. She then hands him a bag of cherry tomatoes and suggests he visit Satsuki to make up with her. Later, at her apartment, Naoto wonders if Satsuki is already home. He tries the doorknob and is surprised when it opens easily. Inside, he finds the unit nearly empty. The space feels cold and uninviting. He starts to wonder how her parents could let her live like this, as it doesn't look like a place anyone would want to come home to. Suddenly, Naoto remembers the expression Satsuki wore the day before the incident. It was a smile, but one that looked painfully sad. The memory lingers and he wonders if things might have turned out differently had he said something sooner. As he continues looking around her nearly empty apartment, he notices a calendar hanging on the wall. Scribbled notes and markings tell him Satsuki has a part-time job. Curious, he traces the calendar to today's date and reads that she's supposed to be handing out flyers by the station. He heads straight there, and just as the calendar indicated, he spots Satsuki among the crowd, handing out flyers for a Chinese restaurant. She's wearing an outfit much cuter than her usual style, which is already attracting the attention of a group of men nearby. Naoto blushes at the sight, feeling both flustered and awkward, especially when Satsuki catches sight of him. With a cold glare, Satsuki marches away toward the mascot nearby, then straight back to Naoto. She brings him to a secluded area and reminds him of their argument that morning. Naoto tries to explain and apologize, but Satsuki remains firm and distant. Their attention is soon pulled away by the commotion of a small crowd. Satsuki's boss runs up to them in a panic, explaining that the person inside the mascot costume has fainted from the heat. Spotting Naoto, the boss immediately begs him to step in and fill the role, promising compensation. Next thing he knows, Naoto finds himself in the hot panda mascot suit, standing beside Satsuki. He peeks at her again, still slightly enchanted by her appearance, but his admiration is cut short when a group of kids knocks him over. The fall causes Satsuki to lose balance too, and she gets visibly irritated with him. Despite the mishaps, they continue their shift. Naoto surprisingly proves to be a hit, especially with younger girls who find the mascot adorable. He puts in effort to entertain the crowd, being kind to everyone except for the men making advances on Satsuki. When their shift finally ends, Satsuki's boss thanks Naoto for helping out. Though exhausted, Naoto realizes the day wasn't all that bad, and he's even earned enough money to buy Suzu a small gift. As he prepares to leave, he spots Satsuki, and Satsuki asks how he managed to find her. Naoto admits he visited her apartment and saw the calendar. Satsuki scolds him for trespassing, but quickly lets it slide. Naoto claims that she really needs to fix her door. Satsuki brushes it off, saying it doesn't matter since no one cares about her anyway. Frustrated, Naoto blurts out that he does care. He says she's important to him because she's his childhood friend. That fact alone is enough to make him worry about her. Satsuki stops in her tracks, his words catching her off guard. She turns and smiles, asking if it's really okay for her to be around him again now that he remembers their childhood friends. Naoto, a little confused by her sudden mood shift, agrees that she can. They reach her apartment, and Naoto mentions he already placed the cherry tomatoes Suzu gave her in the fridge. Just as he's about to leave, Satsuki casually asks if Yukari confessed. Naoto freezes for a moment, unsure of how to respond. Expecting him to shut her down and say it's none of her business, Satsuki is surprised when he admits he's not sure how to respond to Yukari's confession. He explains that while he's incredibly happy to have been confessed to by someone he likes, he also fears disappointing her. Satsuki tells him that it's okay to take his time. No one has a right to pressure or judge him for his feelings. The next morning, Naoto meets Yukari early. With his thoughts finally in order, he prepares to give her an answer. Naoto meets Yukari to finally get his answer to her confession. He admits he was surprised, but to her disappointment, he immediately begins apologizing. Yukari assumes this means rejection, but Naoto clarifies that he isn't rejecting her. He's apologizing because he fears she'll eventually be disappointed in him. He explains that he wants to ask for more time to respond since he's dealing with so many things at the moment. Yukari refuses to wait. She declares that the only one she wants is Naoto. She had been ready to accept rejection if Naoto truly didn't like her romantically, but since he admitted he does like her and it's only his insecurities holding him back, she refuses to accept his hesitation. She proposes they try a trial period where they date until summer break. If at any point Naoto feels uncomfortable, they can end it easily. Naoto feels the idea sounds disrespectful since it makes their relationship feel like an experiment, but Yukari pleads with him, saying she only wants them to be connected, even if it's just for now. After school, Naoto meets with Shigenobu to talk about the situation. Shigenobu asks why he didn't just accept Yukari's confession outright and instead agreed to this odd dating trial. Naoto admits that he does like her, but he's scared of disappointing her. He explains that he wants to take his future seriously before stepping fully into a relationship. He's planning to start a part-time job so that he and Suzu can become financially independent from their aunt. He also wants to build more confidence so that he can stand by Yukari without feeling ashamed of himself. Shigenobu listens and reminds Naoto that technicalities aside, he is now formally dating Yukari. Naoto drifts into a dreamlike state, confessing that despite everything, he's extremely happy about it. Shigenobu smiles and tells him that if he has any questions about part-time work or dating, he can come to him anytime. Suddenly, Satsuki appears in her waitress uniform, surprised to hear that Naoto has agreed to date Yukari after what she had told him the day before. Naoto tries to defend his actions, but instead of scolding him, Satsuki congratulates him. Shigenobu compliments Satsuki's outfit, and she immediately asks if Naoto came there just to make fun of her while she's working. Naoto tells her he's actually there for a job interview. Satsuki then smiles, revealing that today is her last day since she'll be switching jobs soon. One of the cafe staff notices Satsuki lingering too long with Naoto and Shigenobu and quickly scolds her for neglecting the other tables. Naoto stands and tells his friends that he'll let them know if he gets the job once it's over. As they watch him leave, Satsuki comments that they'll have to keep an eye on him so that he can date Yukari without any trouble. Shigenobu studies her carefully before asking if she's really okay. Satsuki smiles faintly and assures him that she is secure in her role as Naoto's childhood friend. Meanwhile, Naoto meets with Satsuki's boss, who explains that he still has to interview one more applicant to replace Satsuki before he can interview Naoto. He directs Naoto to wait in the holding room. When Naoto enters, he's surprised to find Makina sleeping inside. Her uniform isn't one he recognizes, but something about her face feels familiar. He tries to remember where he might have met her before, leaning in a little closer to study her features. Makina suddenly stirs awake, and both of them scream in shock when their eyes meet. Without hesitation, she accuses Naoto of trying to kiss her. Flustered, Naoto insists he wasn't doing anything of the sort, only trying to see her face more clearly. The manager arrives just in time to catch the commotion. Makina immediately points to Naoto and tells him that he was trying to take advantage of her. Naoto protests, repeating that he was only trying to recognize her. The manager, though exasperated, decides to settle the matter by speaking to each of them separately. As they leave the room, Makina glances at the documents on the table and softly reads Naoto's name aloud, as if curious about him. Naoto finishes his interview, but he walks to the station afterward with a heavy heart, convinced that the earlier incident has doomed his chances. Just as he reaches the platform, he hears Yukari calling out, relieved to have caught him before he went home. Naoto apologizes for being hard to contact and promises that once he earns enough money, he'll buy a smartphone to make things easier. Yukari beams at him and suggests they do something together tomorrow after school since they'll only have morning classes. She explains that she wants to go on a proper date before exam season begins. It's then Naoto remembers that they are, in fact, dating now, which means going on dates is part of it. Feeling awkward, he apologizes to her in advance. The next day, however, Suzu grows disappointed when she sees Yukari with them. She still doesn't know that Naoto and Yukari are dating. Naoto promises Yukari that he'll eventually tell Suzu at a better time. Yukari decides to introduce herself to Suzu, who immediately finds her very pretty but quickly warns that she won't be swayed by Yukari's sweet demeanor. She insists that she won't fall for any nice act just because Yukari looks the part. However, Yukari doesn't let Suzu's bluntness faze her and simply replies that she hopes they can have fun together. Suzu eventually softens, unable to resist Yukari's dazzling smile. Meanwhile, Shigenobu and Satsuki are hiding nearby, spying on the group. They quietly judge Naoto for bringing Suzu along to what should have been his first proper date with Yukari. Once Shigenobu confirms that the group met up safely, he suggests heading home. But Satsuki doesn't move an inch, instead bidding him farewell as though she intends to stay. Inside the zoo, Suzu is absolutely thrilled by all the animals around her. Naoto is relieved to see her enjoying herself despite the awkward beginning. He lets Suzu climb onto his shoulders so she can see the monkeys better, which makes her beam with joy. Then, with innocent cheers, Suzu offers Yukari a turn on Naoto's shoulders. But before they can respond, Suzu dashes off excitedly to the next animal exhibit. Shigenobu ends up following Satsuki as she trails after the group. But when he looks back at Satsuki, he finds her frozen in place. Having never visited a zoo before, she is unnerved by them roaming around. Shigenobu can't help but feel a little amused when he realizes that she is genuinely frightened of the giraffes towering nearby. At the petting zoo, Suzu is fascinated by a goat's beard while Naoto takes the moment to apologize to Yukari for how hectic the day has been. Yukari smiles warmly, assuring him that she's having a wonderful time, especially since it's been so long since she last visited a zoo. Just then, Suzu comes running back, clutching her stomach and complaining that she's hungry. Yukari nervously admits that she prepared a packed lunch for them. Naoto stiffens at the memory of tasting her previous attempt at home cooking. To Naoto's surprise, everything looks neat and appetizing, though he remains hesitant to try it. Suzu, however, dives right in. She takes a huge bite of a sandwich and instantly melts with delight, declaring how delicious it is. Yukari admits her mother helped her prepare the food, which eases his worries. Encouraged, Naoto tries some himself and is pleasantly surprised by how good it tastes. Naoto promises that next time he'll be the one to bring lunch for them to share. Not far away, Shigenobu and Satsuki continue their watch. Shigenobu suggests they grab lunch as well, but Satsuki stubbornly refuses to leave. Glancing around, Shigenobu notices that many of the other visitors are families. He remarks that he'll have to leave soon and wonders aloud how long Satsuki plans on tailing the group. Satsuki admits that she isn't sure herself, confessing that she doesn't even know why she decided to follow them in the first place. After a while, Suzu eventually dozes off, her head resting comfortably on Naoto's lap. He explains to Yukari that she's simply exhausted since it's their first real outing since arriving in town. Yukari offers to clean up the picnic spot since Naoto's hands are occupied, and he can't help but admire how considerate she is. Trying to distract himself, he tells Yukari that once he lands a job, he'll start saving up so he can take her somewhere nice during summer break. Yukari asks if he's talking about the job at the Chinese restaurant. Naoto confirms but admits he's not confident about getting hired. Still, he promises that if he doesn't make it, he'll find another job as soon as possible. Yukari lowers her gaze and softly confesses that she doesn't need to be anywhere special as long as she's with him. She adds that she doesn't mind if Suzu comes along either. The air grows tense as their hands inch closer. Their fingertips finally brush, but Suzu stirs awake and sits up, announcing that she needs to go to the bathroom. After Suzu finishes, she spots Satsuki and Shigenobu nearby. She doesn't recognize Shigenobu, so he introduces himself as Naoto's classmate and friend. Naoto notices them a moment later and demands to know what they're doing at the zoo. Shigenobu and Satsuki admit they had been following him out of concern. Satsuki apologizes to Yukari for intruding on their date, then turns to Suzu, asking her to join them for drinks and ice cream. Shigenobu assuring Naoto and Yukari that they'll keep Suzu entertained so the two of them can enjoy some time alone. As Suzu walks with Satsuki and Shigenobu, Suzu almost asks about Naoto and Yukari's relationship but decides against it. She changes the subject by requesting a soda-flavored ice cream. Naoto and Yukari are finally left alone again. Naoto apologizes for his friend's interference and notices that Yukari seems unsettled. His eyes drift, catching sight of a couple walking hand in hand through the zoo. He glances at Yukari and tries to reach out but withdraws his hand at the last second. To his surprise, Yukari shyly grabs hold of his thumb, encouraging him to finally take her hand properly. That evening, Naoto lies in bed staring at his own hand, still in awe of what happened. He's grateful that Yukari chose to spend her time with him. He looks forward to holding her hand again. To make that happen, he swears to do his best with the part-time job and with the upcoming exams so he can ask Yukari out for real, ending the trial stage of their relationship. Yukari is happy with their progress, yet a shadow lingers in her mind. She can't forget that Naoto and Satsuki once kissed. A few days later after school, Naoto notices Yukari has left without him. Some of the boys begin speculating about his relationship with her. Naoto dodges their questions, knowing he'll only invite trouble if they discover the truth. Meanwhile, Yukari stands in a convenience store aisle staring at a package of protection. After a while, she leaves, smiling to herself at the thought that summer break is drawing near. As exams loom, the school is filled with frantic students buried in review. Amidst the chaos, Naoto still finds himself smiling whenever his eyes meet Yukari's across the classroom. Meanwhile, Makina stands by the gates, drawing curious stares from passing students. A group of boys tries to get her attention, and she introduces herself and asks them to call Naoto out to meet her. Naoto and Satsuki chat by the lockers, with Satsuki curious about how his job interview went. Yukari suddenly arrives and tries to invite Naoto to join her study group. Before he can answer, a student calls him over to the window, saying a girl is asking for him. When Naoto peers outside, he sees Makina smiling at him. Some of the guys nearby recognize her and tell Naoto that Makina is someone he knew from middle school. At the mention of her name, Naoto suddenly remembers who she is. The group ends up bringing her to the cafeteria, where Makina introduces herself. She explains that she used to be on the track team with Naoto back in middle school. Now she attends Street Solarina's Academy for girls under an athletic scholarship, having decided to pursue track more seriously. One of the guys is impressed, saying the school is famous for its sports program. Another adds that he's surprised Naoto is in track at all. Naoto quickly clarifies that he only joined the team on paper, since club membership was required at his old school. Despite rarely showing up, he remembers Makina, as she was a very popular member of the team. He mentions that she even appeared in shows and newspapers because of her skills. Excited, the guys start asking to take pictures with her, and Makina happily agrees. Suddenly, Makina informs Naoto that both of them got the restaurant job. The boss had told her, but had no way to contact Naoto, since he doesn't have a smartphone, so she decided to look for him herself. Satsuki immediately congratulates him, and Naoto beams, happy to finally have work. For a moment, Makina's expression shifts, but she quickly returns to her bright smile. Tugging him to his feet, she suggests they go smartphone shopping together. When Naoto hesitates, she teases him, asking if he already has a girlfriend. Before he can respond, the boys cut in, dismissing the idea that Naoto could possibly have one. Makina then leads Naoto out of the building, leaving him with no choice but to follow. Seeing Yukari's discomfort, Satsuki reassures her that Naoto is incapable of cheating, and that he couldn't just admit to a relationship in front of everyone. As Naoto and Makina walk through town, she suddenly asks why he tried to kiss her the other day. Naoto quickly denies it, explaining that he only leaned in for a closer look because she seemed familiar. Makina then tries fishing for a compliment, asking if Naoto finds her cuter than before. He agrees, though a bit hesitantly. To shift the mood, Naoto compliments her on getting into such a prestigious school and excelling in track. He adds honestly that he's surprised she still remembers him since they barely saw each other during practice back then. A short while later, Naoto is holding his brand new phone. Makina offers to be his first contact, but Naoto is already typing in Yukari's number. On the other end, Yukari sees an unknown number flashing on her screen. Curious, she answers, only to be shocked when she hears Naoto's voice. He tells her that he finally has a phone and wanted her to be the very first person he called. When the call ends, Yukari is so happy she lets out a squeal, thrilled at the thought of being his first call. Meanwhile, Makina stares at Naoto accusingly and demands to know who he just called. Flustered, Naoto admits that it was his girlfriend, but explains he couldn't say anything earlier in front of his classmates. Makina asks if Satsuki is his girlfriend, but Naoto immediately denies it. Still, he refuses to reveal who she is. Instead, he politely excuses himself, though he thanks Makina for helping him buy a phone. To her surprise, Naoto looks genuinely happy as he says it. Later, when Makina returns to school, her coach scolds her for skipping practice and brings up her summer training. Makina, however, informs her that she's taken a part-time job. A few girls overhear and start gossiping, noting that Makina still hasn't been able to post any impressive time since entering the academy. Back in her room, Makina lies quietly, mulling over the revelation that Naoto has a girlfriend. With a smile, she decides it might be fun to have them break up, so she can enjoy spending time with Naoto whenever she feels bored. The next day, Naoto enjoys a good harvest, and Satsuki comes over to eat some of the vegetables. As she happily devours them, Naoto eyes her suspiciously and remarks that she's gotten thinner. Satsuki only laughs it off, joking that her chest is still in good proportion. Suzu then approaches and reminds Naoto that he has work today, causing him to rush off toward the restaurant. At the restaurant, Makina immediately complains about the kitchen staff uniforms, saying they aren't nearly as cute as the ones the waitresses get to wear. Throughout the shift, she tries to distract Naoto, but he rejects all her offers to hang out. When she even tries to seduce him, Naoto scolds her sharply, telling her to fix her clothes and act more professional. Their boss walks by and immediately scolds Makina for wearing her uniform incorrectly. Embarrassed, Makina realizes that none of her attempts to stand out have worked. She tries to tie her hair up, but struggles since there are too many knots, making it difficult. Noticing this, Naoto offers to help. As he carefully ties her hair, he mentions that he used to do his little sister's hair every morning. Hearing this, Makina suddenly feels like things click into place. She concludes that Naoto must see her as a younger sister, since she's younger than him. However, Naoto lightly scolds her, saying that by high school she should already know how to handle basic chores, like combing her hair. Realizing he might have sounded too harsh, he quickly takes it back, telling her that he knows she's capable since she's always been amazing for as long as he can remember. Makina, with renewed energy, confidently agrees, saying she can do anything if she puts her mind to it. Soon, she focuses on her tasks and carries them out flawlessly, even earning praise from their boss. Naoto tries to congratulate her, but she brushes him off. In a locker room afterward, Makina reflects on how she had actually worked earnestly today, despite originally planning to just do the bare minimum. To her surprise, it feels good to be praised since it's been a long while since she's felt that way. As she thinks, she notices someone else in the room. Satsuki has been standing there the whole time. Unbothered, Satsuki explains that she just came by to pick something up. Then, without warning, she cups one of Makina's chest and casually remarks that Naoto prefers bigger ones. Before Makina can react, Satsuki leaves, leaving her completely confused. Later, Naoto is waiting near the spot where he planned to meet Yukari when Makina suddenly runs up to him, demanding that he break up with Satsuki. Naoto, startled, tells her again that Satsuki isn't his girlfriend. Makina argues back, pointing out that Satsuki was just at the restaurant earlier, and to prove her point, she gestures to Satsuki walking down the street. Naoto suddenly remembers that Satsuki mentioned changing jobs, but she never said where. Without a word, he bolts after her, with Makina quickly following behind. They round a corner and stop in shock because before them is a street lined with bars, each advertising inviting cosplay outfits. Naoto's imagination betrays him for a moment, picturing Satsuki dressed in some of them. This is no place for Satsuki or Makina to be in. He urges Makina to go back, but she refuses to leave him. Just then, Makina's track team captain spots her and scolds her for hanging around with a male student from another school in such a shady place. The captain implies that Naoto may be the reason Makina has been skipping practice. Before she can say more, Makina shouts back and quickly pulls her captain away from Naoto. Naoto checks the time and realizes he is late for his date with Yukari. Reluctantly, he decides to set aside his worries about Satsuki and hurries off. During their date, Yukari asks about his part-time job. Naoto explains that he worked a shift with Makina, but since they were both new hires, they spent the whole day doing chores. He reassures her that he only sees Makina as a younger sister, which eases Yukari's unease about her. Afterward, Naoto walks Yukari home. Yukari shyly mentions that she would like him to visit her house someday. Her mother has been teaching her how to cook, and once she improves, she wants Naoto to come over and try her food. They part ways with a promise, leaving Naoto thoughtful. Naoto reflects on Yukari's invitation, comforted by the thought that her family will be around when he visits. But his mind soon drifts back to Satsuki, remembering how she had never spoken openly about her own situation. Concerned, he decides to visit her apartment. Satsuki is caught off guard when Naoto arrives but allows him inside. He admits that he saw her earlier on his way home from work and couldn't shake the worry that she might have taken on a job unsuitable for a high school student. He reasons that since she seems unwilling to rely on her family, the least she could do is confide in him instead of bottling everything up. Satsuki is taken aback by his serious tone, but softens when she sees the concern in his eyes. Just as Naoto prepares to leave, she sits down beside him and says she has decided to talk. Instead of answering his question directly, Satsuki turns the conversation back on him, asking about his day. Naoto grows frustrated at her evasiveness, but she insists that she'll share only if he shares as well. Naoto reluctantly admits that his feet ache from standing the entire shift. Without hesitation, Satsuki grabs his foot and offers to massage it. Naoto, bewildered, briefly wonders if this is connected to the job she's hiding, but the thought vanishes when she accidentally presses too hard, causing him pain. After apologizing, she massages more carefully, admitting that her own feet hurt a lot when she first started her job, but assures him he will get used to it in time. Her hands gradually move up to his legs, making Naoto increasingly nervous. His eyes wander as he tries to avoid looking at her. When she moves closer to his thighs, he finally speaks up, telling her not to get too close since he's already committed to Yukari. Satsuki admits she doesn't fully understand the boundaries between them, but promises not to cross a line that would damage their bond. Still, she lingers and asks where the limit lies when childhood friends stop being just childhood friends. Naoto struggles with discomfort, unsure how to respond, but his phone suddenly rings with a message from Yukari. The interruption breaks the tension. Satsuki pulls away, apologizing for going too far and explaining that she was only fooling around. She then shows him a flyer, revealing that she works at a steakhouse where the summer wages are higher. The alleyway he saw her in earlier was just a shortcut. Relieved, Naoto breathes easier, realizing it was nothing like what he had feared. Satsuki smiles, reassured by Naoto's concern for her. She explains that her family is fine, but she prefers not to contact them. Their moment is cut short when Naoto's phone rings again, revealing that it's Makina. When he answers, Makina asks if he is free to watch the weekend fireworks with her as her boyfriend. The next day, Makina complains since Naoto had refused her request. He explains that it wouldn't be right for him to pretend to be her boyfriend. But Makina pleads, saying she had already told everyone she would be watching the fireworks with her boyfriend. Seeing her desperation, Naoto suggests that he can ask Shigenobu instead, since Shigenobu would look the part better than he. Makina hesitates at the idea and asks if Naoto will be going with his own girlfriend. Naoto avoids the question by saying he's going on break. One day, Shigenobu texts Naoto, suggesting that he invite Yukari to watch the fireworks with him since it would surely make her happy. Naoto agrees and quickly calls Yukari, but to his disappointment, he learns that she already has plans to watch with her hometown friends. She invites him to join them, but Naoto politely declines, saying there will always be another chance when it could just be the two of them. In a quiet voice, Yukari admits that she would prefer it to be just them, maybe the week after or the one after that. Her words are so soft that Naoto barely hears them. Instead of repeating herself, she simply apologizes for turning him down. Feeling let down, Naoto decides to ask Suzu instead, but when he brings it up, Suzu also turns him down, saying she already has plans to watch with a friend. She suggests he tag along and maybe even invite Satsuki, but Naoto isn't too eager about bringing her. Then Suzu remembers that Satsuki can't come anyway, since she has work on the day of the summer festival. In the end, Naoto agrees to join Suzu and her friend since he's free. Later that night, Naoto texts Yukari that he'll be going with Suzu and her friend. Yukari replies happily, offering that they could meet for a little while during the festival since she's sure she can slip away from her friends. The day of the festival finally arrives. Suzu calls Naoto over to meet her friend, who introduces herself as Renan. Renan compliments Suzu on her outfit, and Suzu admits she had wanted to wear a yukata, but found it too hard to walk around in. Naoto realizes Yukari might actually be wearing a yukata that evening. The thought makes his heart race, and he can't help but feel eager to see her. Before he can dwell on it further, he suddenly gets a message from Shigenobu. Apparently, Makina had suddenly run away from him in the middle of their outing. Naoto pales at the news, immediately worrying where this might lead. Turning to Suzu, Naoto apologizes and explains he has to leave to take care of something urgent and dashes towards the shrine. There, he finally catches up to Makina. She looks flustered and complains that she had been completely caught off guard by Shigenobu's mature personality. Naoto is surprised, assuming Makina was used to dealing with boys. But Makina shakes her head and admits that Shigenobu is different since it was more overwhelming than she expected. She confesses that being alone with him feels new and unfamiliar before quickly catching herself. To save face, she insists that she would be fine if she were with someone like Naoto instead. Makina points out that Shigenobu went straight to complimenting her yukata, and it's only then that Naoto realizes she is in fact wearing one. Makina exclaims that Naoto is exactly the type of boy she is used to dealing with. She then insists that Naoto become her pretend boyfriend instead. Naoto immediately refuses, reminding her that he is supposed to meet his actual girlfriend at the shrine. Makina pushes further, saying she wants to tag along so she can finally see this girlfriend for herself. Their back and forth soon attracts the attention of two guys who approach and try to convince Makina to ditch Naoto and watch the fireworks with them instead. Both Naoto and Makina scramble to come up with excuses, but the men don't back down. Realizing the situation could get worse, Naoto instructs Makina to follow his signal. Waiting for the right moment, Naoto suddenly shouts for her to go. Makina bolts forward with such surprising speed that even Naoto is momentarily stunned. Recovering quickly, Naoto chases after her and eventually finds her by the shrine. She scolds him for telling her to run, claiming that he should have fought for her instead. Naoto calmly argues that running was the smartest option, as fighting would have only escalated things and possibly caused trouble for both of them. He insists he would tell his girlfriend the same thing, because avoiding unnecessary danger is the better choice. Makina then presses him further, asking what he would do if running wasn't an option. Naoto answers firmly that if escape was impossible, he would do whatever it takes to protect the person he considers important. His words make Makina's cheeks flush red, and she shyly asks if she too would be someone Naoto would protect. Before Naoto can respond, the first firework bursts across the night sky, stealing his attention. When he turns back to ask her to repeat her question, Makina refuses, her face flushed with embarrassment. Naoto then remembers that he still has to meet Yukari, blurting out her name in the process. Immediately, Makina latches onto it, realizing that Yukari must be his girlfriend. She pleads to meet her, convinced that Yukari couldn't possibly be that pretty. But just then, Yukari spots them and walks over. When Makina gets a good look at her, she feels an unexpected pang of regret. Naoto introduces them, but Makina quickly excuses herself, claiming she needs to head back to her team. Naoto worries about leaving her without a fake boyfriend, but Makina assures him she'll think of something before dashing off. Still upset, she can't understand why it bothers her so much that Naoto's girlfriend is beautiful. When her captain suddenly catches her hand, Makina realizes the truth, that she has feelings for Naoto. Meanwhile, Naoto and Yukari ride the train home together. Yukari admits that she wants to spend more time with just him. When they exit the station, it begins to rain, forcing them to take shelter under a nearby roof. Since the rain is still light, Yukari suggests they should walk quickly so they can get home without getting too wet. However, she forgets she is wearing a yukata and trips. Naoto suggests that they hold hands so she won't stumble again. Yukari, flustered but pleased, confidently extends her hand. After a few minutes, the drizzle turns into a downpour, and the wind begins to pick up. Naoto realizes it would be too risky to continue and decides they should wait out the storm at his house since it's the closest place. As they near his home, he unexpectedly spots Satsuki standing outside. Satsuki explains that she only came by to put a tarp over the vegetables and to put away Suzu's planters, but both Naoto and Yukari grow concerned for her. Naoto insists they all come inside. Inside, Naoto considers informing Tamahyo, but after seeing several do not disturb signs on her door, decides to let her know in the morning instead. He returns to the room where Satsuki and Yukari are and tells the girls they should bathe ahead of him while he searches for some clothes they can borrow. Satsuki apologizes for the inconvenience and heads to the bath. During their bath, Satsuki can't help but be amazed at how big Yukari's chest is compared to hers, leaving Yukari embarrassed. As they soak in the warm water, Yukari decides to ask why Satsuki spends so much time at Naoto's house. Satsuki explains that she helps Suzu with the vegetable garden and reassures Yukari that she doesn't need to worry. Yukari tries to deny her unease, but one sharp look from Satsuki makes her admit the truth that she does worry a lot. To ease her mind, Satsuki tells Yukari that Naoto looks genuinely happy when he's with her. She further reassures Yukari that her own relationship with Naoto is nothing more than that of childhood friends, and that she wouldn't want to ruin that bond. Yukari, however, looks at her uncertainly, sensing there's more behind Satsuki's words. She tries to press for her real feelings, but Satsuki insists that she's fine as long as Naoto is happy and gets what he wants. With that, she leaves Yukari alone in the bath. Yukari still feels uneasy, but ultimately decides to let it go. Later, Naoto receives a text from Suzu's friend and parents informing him that Suzu won't be coming home tonight. Satsuki seizes the opportunity to tease Naoto, joking that he'd want to spend the night with both of them. She even suggests that Naoto and Yukari should take the chance to make out, leaving both of them red-faced with embarrassment. Their reaction prompts Satsuki to conclude that they haven't even kissed yet. Naoto sits by the door of his room, staring at the planters as his thoughts drift to Yukari and the complicated situation. His phone buzzes with a message from Suzu, reminding him to bring the planters inside from the garden. Suddenly, he hears a voice and thinking it's Yukari, only to see Satsuki standing there, teasing him lightly. She turns to leave, but Naoto calls out to her, thanking her sincerely for coming all this way just to care for the garden during the storm. Satsuki looks caught off guard by his words. Though she tries to brush it off, her face betrays the faintest hint of fluster before she heads back to her room. Soon after, both she and Yukari settle down for the night. Yukari makes up her mind and quietly slips into Naoto's room. She finds him already fast asleep. She realizes this may be her perfect chance to kiss him. Her face warms as she leans closer, but just before her lips touch his, Naoto murmurs something in his sleep. Hearing Suzu's name escape his lips, Yukari freezes. She hesitates, realizing it wouldn't feel right to kiss him without his consent. She decides to leave, but at that moment, Naoto stirs awake. In his haze, he mistakes her for Satsuki and scolds her. Blinking the sleep from his eyes, Naoto finally realizes it is Yukari before him. Embarrassed, she explains that she couldn't sleep. Their conversation turns awkward when Yukari suddenly mentions that he had called out Satsuki's name in his sleep. Naoto panics, scrambling for an explanation, but before he can properly respond, Yukari presses him with a request. She tells him that if he does something with her now, maybe it will stop him from thinking about Satsuki, especially before Satsuki realizes her own feelings for him. Naoto assumes she means kissing. After wrestling with himself for a moment, he shuts his eyes and leans in. But Yukari suddenly stands, surprising him, and then lies down on his bed instead. Naoto looks at her in confusion until he notices she isn't wearing pants. The realization makes his thoughts spin. He wonders when Yukari became so bold, struggling to steady his mind. Gathering his nerve, he moves closer, intending to kiss her, but Yukari interrupts. She asks if it's alright not to go all the way, since she hadn't prepared herself properly and her period had just ended that day. Naoto freezes, realizing she had meant only kissing. She quietly asks again if it's fine to go only part of the way. Her trembling hand squeezes his hands as she admits that with Naoto, she feels safe. She believes he's different from other guys. Her words stir something deep inside him. Slowly, Naoto lets go of her hands and sits back, leaving Yukari confused. He explains gently that hooking up isn't something they should rush. For a moment, Yukari's face twists with hurt before she suddenly runs out of the room. Left alone, Naoto convinces himself he made the right choice. They've worked hard to get this far, and he should be grateful they're already together. He reminds himself to protect their relationship so it doesn't break. Yet as he lies back down, a hollow feeling lingers as if he's just missed something important. Back in the girl's room, Yukari hides under a blanket, cheeks burning with shame. Tears slip down her face, soft enough to be heard by Satsuki, who lies awake. Hearing Yukari cry, Satsuki thinks to herself, calling Naoto an idiot. The next day, Naoto reads over Yukari's message, informing him that she had left first thing in the morning and apologized for her actions. His face reddens at the memory, and Satsuki calls out to him, saying she will also be leaving soon. He decides to walk with her since he has to make his way to work. Along the way, he asks if Yukari had said anything, but Satsuki replies that she hadn't. Still, she admits she knows what happened last night since she was in the room next door. She reveals that she's proud of him, saying he managed to control himself well given the situation. However, she advises him to work on his communication skills more, otherwise he'll just end up making Yukari cry. At the Chinese restaurant, Naoto checks his phone to see if Yukari has read his last message, but notices it hasn't even been opened. He starts to doubt if the choice he made last night was the right one. A new message suddenly pops up, but it's Renan and Suzu telling him they'll drop by the restaurant later to hang out. Naoto begins work but lacks his usual energy, which doesn't escape Makina's notice. She presses him about it, but he brushes her off. Growing curious, she wonders aloud if he spent the night with Yukari. Naoto's rending face makes her fluster, realizing she might have guessed correctly. Trying to recover, she comments on how cute and nice Yukari is, but Naoto suddenly snaps at her. Hurt by his dismissiveness, Makina goes quiet. Naoto tries to apologize, but before he can, their boss calls for his attention. Their boss hands him tickets to an animated film that was given to the restaurant. He tells Naoto to take Suzu since she'll likely enjoy it, and even gives Makina one as well. But Makina frowns, shoving her ticket back at him and asking that he return it. Seeing how upset she is, Naoto instead suggests that she come with him and Suzu after work. Makina pouts but agrees. Meanwhile, Yukari sits outside a library staring at Naoto's message. Yukari worries that this might be a sign that Naoto wants to break up with her. Shigenobu exits the library and is surprised to see Yukari outside. When the topic of Naoto comes up, Yukari grows visibly uneasy. Picking up on her shift in mood, Shigenobu gently asks if something happened between them. Yukari immediately flusters, blurting out her fears that Naoto might be planning to break up with her. Concerned, Shigenobu takes her to a nearby fast food place so she can calm down. As they sit across from each other, he listens carefully to her worries. He reassures her that Naoto isn't the type to stop liking someone so easily. Still, Yukari looks unconvinced, her eyes clouded with doubt. Shigenobu reminds her that as a couple, she and Naoto need to trust each other more. If she feels insecure, then she needs to talk things out with him directly rather than assume the worst. Yukari admits she wants to hurry and make her relationship with Naoto official. To her, Naoto is the only man she could ever want, and if she doesn't solidify things quickly, Satsuki might end up stealing him away. Shigenobu sits back, caught off guard by her sudden possessiveness. He doesn't press her further, but as Yukari excuses herself and leaves, he can't help but think Yukari struggles with self-esteem more than he realized. Meanwhile, at the theater, Makina finally meets Suzu and Renan. She's surprised to learn that Naoto's younger sister is only in 4th grade. Naoto checks his phone again, but Yukari still hasn't replied. Before the film begins, Makina leans closer and asks if it's really okay for her to be there, given that he already has a girlfriend. Understanding her implication, Naoto jokes that he's just chaperoning 3 kids, hinting that Makina is the 3rd. As the lights dim, Suzu and Renan become absorbed in the movie. Beside them, Naoto dozes off, his head tilting against Makina's shoulder. By sunset, Yukari stands alone at a train station, staring at her phone. None of her messages have been read. When she tries calling, Naoto doesn't pick up. Her chest tightens with dread. She begins to fear that Naoto doesn't like her anymore. The next day, Yukari receives a message from Naoto, explaining that his phone had been on silent while he was at the movies. He apologizes for missing her calls and says he hopes they can talk tomorrow. She smiles, happy that her fears from yesterday weren't true. She quickly replies of her available schedule, waiting anxiously for his confirmation. Suddenly, her mind chooses to focus on Naoto mentioning going to the movies. She starts to worry that he had brought Satsuki. Meanwhile, Naoto debates whether he should just call Yukari instead of arranging a meeting. Satsuki's warning from before still echoes in his mind, but he feels that talking face-to-face is the best way to properly express himself. As he ponders, Makina leans over his shoulder and notices the long list of missed calls on his phone. Before Naoto can shoo her away, he notices her outfit. Makina proudly reveals that she's been given waitress duties for the day. Makina, catching his stare, suddenly feels self-conscious and blurts out a question about chest sizes he prefers. Naoto pointedly ignores her, turning his attention toward their boss instead. Later, Naoto heads toward the place where he's supposed to meet Yukari. That's when he notices Makina trailing behind him. She insists he take her out, but Naoto firmly refuses, clarifying that yesterday had been mostly for Suzu, not for her. Unexpectedly, Yukari arrives earlier than planned. Surprised, Naoto asks why she's there, and Yukari admits she wanted to reassure herself by seeing him sooner. Before he can speak further, she cuts him off, saying they'll talk properly after her prep school classes. As Yukari leaves, Makina steps forward, asking if she can borrow Naoto until their meeting. Yukari pauses, telling her it's fine as long as Naoto is okay with it. She adds that Naoto had already reassured her and that she trusts him. Makina quickly whisks Naoto off to a shopping center, where she gleefully shops for clothes while making him carry her bags. Eventually, Naoto asks why she wanted to spend time with him. Makina looks away shyly and admits that she might have a crush on someone. The realization had surprised her, and now she feels conflicted about what to do with her feelings. She's afraid of ruining the good relationship they already have. Naoto, oblivious, misunderstands and firmly pats her shoulder, telling her he understands and that they should both do their best with their crushes. Makina then spots a lingerie store and drags Naoto toward it. Pointing at a particularly dirty piece, she teases about buying it. Naoto tries to brush it off, but his mind betrays him as he can't help but picture Yukari wearing it. Makina tries to play it off by suggesting she should try on the lingerie, but the words come out awkwardly and leave her red with embarrassment. Naoto takes her to a nearby steakhouse. To their surprise, Satsuki is working there. She eyes them suspiciously and she scolds him for cheating. Makina jumps in, explaining that she had Yukari's permission to be with him. Satsuki gives her a measured look and casually places a hand on Naoto's chest. With a sly grin, she says she should borrow him sometime as well. Makina stiffens at the bold remark, trembling in disbelief at Satsuki's nerve. Later, after finishing her meal, Makina slumps on a bench and starts to complain about her role in Naoto's life. She grumbles that none of the girls seem to take her seriously, not even Naoto. Her frustration spills over as she laments how guys, including him, only seem to like girls with bigger chests. Naoto tries to reassure her, telling her that while larger chests are admittedly eye-catching, it doesn't mean that's the only thing that makes someone lovable. He insists she can find love without them. Suddenly, Makina decides to sit on his lap and asks him to squeeze her chest. Naoto freezes, bewildered and irritated, until she hurriedly explains that she's heard it helps them grow bigger. Then, with her cheeks burning, she adds softly that she wouldn't mind if it were him doing it. To hide her timidness, she tries to provoke him further, taunting that he isn't man enough and that even Yukari probably doesn't think so. Naoto, flustered, mutters that he'll do it, causing Makina to topple right out of his lap in shock. As he steadies her, he admits that it's true that he is a coward, especially when it comes to Yukari. What he doesn't notice is that Yukari has arrived and is standing nearby, overhearing everything. While lifting Makina to her feet, Naoto continues. He confesses that he always wants to look perfect in front of Yukari because he loves her so much. But that desire often backfires, leading him to mess up and hurt their relationship instead. Once Makina is standing again, he thanks her sincerely, saying that she's given him the courage to speak openly with Yukari. Makina trembles with frustration since she had meant to push him toward Yukari. Furious, she storms off, accidentally leaving her shopping bags behind. Turning, Naoto finally spots Yukari. She admits she had just arrived, but insists she wants to hear those words again, especially the part where he confessed he loves her. Blushing, Naoto agrees. As they walk back hand in hand, Yukari reveals her insecurities, while Naoto admits he hadn't taken advantage of her the last time because he feared he might not be able to stop. They both agree it's still too early to rush their relationship, but Yukari confesses her worries lie more in the timing than the act itself. Naoto asks Yukari about her cram school, and she tells him she plans to go to college after they graduate high school. She reasons that it will benefit her in the long run and that it's common for married couples these days to both be working. As soon as the words leave her mouth, she grows nervous, realizing how eager she must sound about marriage. Naoto, however, is suddenly struck with unease since he hasn't thought that far into the future at all. When he drops her off in her house, his mind lingers on her words. He begins to convince himself that he also needs to start planning ahead. Still, he pushes thoughts of college aside for later, remembering that he has Makina's shopping bags to deal with first. That evening, Makina goes out for a run. Her thoughts drift to her team captain's warning about missing training camp. If she gets cut from the team, she might even have to transfer schools. At first, the idea unsettles her, but then she considers that not seeing Naoto might make things easier. As she continues running, her chest feels lighter, and she convinces herself she could simply start over somewhere new. But when she reaches the dorms, she finds Naoto waiting for her. He explains that he only came to return the clothes she left behind, since she might need them for her date tomorrow. Wishing her luck, he turns to leave, but Makina remains frozen, staring after him. Her throat tightens and her eyes brim with tears as she realizes she cannot let go of her feelings. That night, she makes up her mind. The next morning, she shows up at Naoto's home and sees Suzu. Makina reveals her plan to quit the track team, but Suzu, unimpressed, tells her to quit chasing Naoto as well. Stunned that Suzu has seen through her so easily, Makina shakes it off and stubbornly declares that she won't give up on her feelings to become Naoto's number one. In her makeshift bathtub, Satsuki dips under the water and tries to hold her breath, but emerges soon after. She attempts again, but her concentration breaks when a memory surfaces. She recalls her childhood with Suzu and Naoto when they had decided to play house. She was assigned the role of the baby, but Satsuki confessed she didn't know how to act like one because she had never experienced what it meant to be babied. The memory unsettles her and she rises from the water again, deciding she's had enough. The next morning, as Naoto gets ready for school, he promises Suzu that he'll help her and Renan with their summer homework and buy her ice cream afterward. When he leaves, Suzu tells herself that she'll chill some watermelons for later. Tamayo checks in on her and wonders why Naoto left for school when it's already summer break. Suzu explains that he's attending extra lessons for entrance exams. This surprises Tamayo, who says Naoto never mentioned wanting to go to college. Suzu admits that he hasn't and that his plan is still to enter the workforce right after graduation and live together with her. Tamayo scowls at the idea, calling it reckless, the kind of thing her brother might have done. Curious, Suzu asks if Tamayo was close to their father, but Tamayo refuses to answer. She asks why Naoto would bother with extra classes if he doesn't plan on college. Annoyed, Suzu finally reveals that Yukari invited him, and Naoto accepted. At school, Naoto hangs with some guys who admit they're only in extra lessons to catch daily glimpses of Yukari. Soon after, Yukari enters and moves to her seat. She lifts her phone in front of her face, hinting at Naoto to check his own. His face flushes when he reads her message, the memory of his recent love confession flooding back. Later, while Naoto waits for Yukari so they can head home together, Satsuki sneaks up behind him and peers at his phone. Startled, Naoto asks why she's there. Satsuki explains she was forced to return to school because she skipped swimming classes. Naoto recalls she once told him she couldn't swim. Satsuki admits she's been practicing on her own but can't hold her breath longer than 20 seconds. She laments that she wished Naoto could have helped her with swimming, just like he had taught her so many other things during her childhood. Feeling a twinge of guilt, Naoto admits quietly that he recently confessed to Yukari, and because of that, he won't be able to stay as close to Satsuki as before. Satsuki gets called back into the pool for class, but before she leaves, she tells Naoto not to feel sorry for her. No matter who he chooses to love, she'll remain the same. She adds that she doesn't need him watching over her. Then, with a playful tone, she says that if Naoto ever needs someone to watch over him, she's willing to do it at any time of the day. She insists she'll do anything he wants her to do, so long as it's within the bounds of what's acceptable between childhood friends. With that, she returns to the pool. At the same time, Yukari calls out to Naoto. Yukari notices Satsuki by the pool and her gaze lingers on her. On their way home, Naoto asks if they can stop by a convenience store. Before he can enter, Yukari suddenly invites him to her house for lunch. Naoto is caught off guard by the sudden invitation but politely declines. Yukari feels guilty for being too impulsive. She admits that ever since Naoto confessed his feelings, she's become a little greedier, wanting more of his time and attention. She tells him that she wishes they could spend more time together. Naoto decides to call Suzu, aware that Renan is at their house. Renan quickly hands the phone to Suzu, who is expecting Naoto to return home soon. Naoto informs her that he won't be able to make it back right away because something came up. At first, Suzu is upset, but she eventually gives in and tells her brother to do whatever he needs to do, but reminds him to buy ice cream on his way home. Relieved that Suzu isn't angry, Naoto asks Yukari if it's really okay for him to come over. Yukari brightens, but before anything else, she hurries to call her mother for permission. Naoto realizes that Yukari still lives with her parents and recalls it's normal to ask for permission. As Yukari makes the call, he steps into the convenience store. They soon arrive at Yukari's home, where she eagerly introduces him to her mother, Mio. Naoto can't help but notice how both mother and daughter look strikingly beautiful. They sit down for lunch and Yukari proudly reveals that she made the potato salad herself. Naoto compliments her cooking but struggles to hold a natural conversation with Mio. Afterward, Yukari brings him into the living room, excusing herself to prepare tea. Left alone, Naoto is approached by Mio, who comments on how unusually excited her daughter seems. Mio tells Naoto that this is the first time Yukari has ever brought a male friend home. Naoto immediately wonders if Yukari only introduced him as a friend, not as her boyfriend. Mio admits that Yukari has spoken about him often and she finds it impressive that he takes such good care of his younger sister. Curious, she asks how they manage meals. Naoto explains that his aunt provides him with an allowance and they make do with that. Mio chuckles, remarking that he's probably already a better cook than Yukari. Overhearing this, Yukari pouts in offense, vowing to get better. Naoto notices several framed photos of Yukari as a child before his eyes land on a family portrait that includes her father and younger brother. Curious, he asks where her brother is. Mio explains that Shu is currently at swimming class to help strengthen his body since he's always been sickly. Mio goes on to confess her worries about the kind of boys Yukari might associate with when she isn't around to watch her. She admits she feels relieved that Naoto seems like such a kind and dependable boy. Yukari immediately scolds her mother for speaking so openly about her insecurities, but Mio insists that it's necessary because Yukari is still very young. Yukari argues that the reason she seems so innocent is because Mio is too strict and overprotective. She insists her mother should start treating her like a proper high school student, then looks at Naoto for support. Caught off guard, Naoto hesitates but agrees with her. Mio only smiles at their united front before excusing herself, remembering that she needs to pick up Shu from swimming. Once Mio leaves, Yukari's expression brightens. She declares that now it's just the two of them in the house. Shyly, she suggests they study in her room. Naoto is surprised, still shocked from the fact that Mio had left them alone together. When they enter Yukari's room, Naoto is taken aback by how clean and tidy it is. They sit together on her bed, and he can feel himself growing nervous. Suddenly, Yukari gets up to close the curtains, dimming the room. She turns back to him and suggests that they pick up where they left off the previous night. Naoto is stunned, quickly pointing out that Mio can return home at any moment. But Yukari reassures him that her mother won't be back until evening. Seeing his hesitation, she reminds him that Mio only sees them as kids anyway. Even though she told Mio that he's her boyfriend, it seems her mother still thinks of him as nothing more than a male friend. Yukari then tells Naoto that she has thought everything through. Today is a safe day for her, and she has even prepared protection. Naoto recalls Mio's words and with hesitation, tells Yukari that moving forward in their relationship still feels too soon for him. Yukari throws herself into his arms, insisting that she wants them to become a real couple soon. Hesitantly, Naoto wraps his trembling hands around her frame. He begins to undress her but fumbles with the ribbon of her uniform. Yukari gently guides his hand to the hook at the back of her neck, but before he can continue, her own nerves overwhelm her. She hugs him, confessing that her heart is racing. Naoto admits that his is pounding just as fast. Slowly, they lean in for a kiss, but before their lips can meet, the sound of Mio arriving home breaks the moment. In an instant, Naoto and Yukari are fully dressed, sitting side by side at her table as Mio enters the room carrying a cake. She explains that she wasn't able to pick up Shu since he has a special class that will take another hour. Yukari excuses herself to make tea, leaving Naoto alone with Mio. As Naoto tries to leave to help Yukari, he knocks over a paper bag, revealing a box of protection. Mio's eyes narrow at the sight, and Naoto freezes, realizing he has been caught. Quickly, he stuffs the box into his bag and announces that he'll be leaving. As he passes her, Mio calmly tells him that Yukari is still a child, then asks for his honest opinion of her daughter. Naoto avoids answering, blurting that he has to go and rushes out of the house. Meanwhile, Yukari is busy preparing tea. Mio calmly tells her that Naoto had already left, saying something urgent had come up. She then asks Yukari if anything happened that made Naoto uncomfortable. Yukari insists nothing did, but Mio tells her she can't hide the truth from her own mother. Irritated, Yukari snaps that she and Naoto can do whatever they want since they are lovers. Unfazed, Mio replies softly, asking if Yukari and Naoto can just remain friends instead of lovers. Out in the sweltering heat, Naoto stops by a bridge, anxiety twisting in his chest. He blames himself for what just happened and feels a desperate need to talk to someone. An image of Satsuki rises in his mind. Overcome by nerves and the heat, Naoto collapses. When he regains consciousness, he finds himself lying under the bridge, shaded from the sun. Before him stands Satsuki, who quietly tells him that he called for her and that she already knows about his little problem with Yukari. Naoto is shocked that Satsuki knows about it, but she calmly tells him that he was the one who said so. She reassures him that his actions are in the right place, since he's a healthy high schooler, but also calls Yukari impatient. She warns that rushing things could easily lead to mistakes, that if Naoto and Yukari moved too fast, they could end up having a child early on. That would cause serious issues and many people would oppose him. Raising a child while dealing with broken families isn't something Naoto could handle right now. Her words strike him deeply. Naoto stares at her, realizing that what she described is exactly what happened to his parents. Satsuki only smiles, saying that she knows everything about him. Then with a teasing grin, she pulls out a protection and tells him he can practice on her instead. She claims she's ready to accept everything, even the consequences when it comes to Naoto. She leans in and kisses him, leaving Naoto feeling faint, his breath caught in his throat. Suddenly, he jolts awake. Satsuki is holding a bottle of water to his lips, and he chokes from drinking too quickly. Looking at her in alarm and confusion, Naoto realizes he had been dreaming. Satsuki explains that she came to the river to practice swimming but found him passed out. She looks at him curiously and asks if something happened, since he was supposed to be with Yukari. Naoto admits that he realized he's far from Yukari's ideal man, and that it feels wrong for her to settle for him. He adds that Satsuki is the only one he can truly open up to about his relationship problems. Feeling a sense of pride from being called important, Satsuki teases him about being babied by her. Her words remind him of Mio telling him Yukari is only a child, and his thoughts also drift back to Yukari's urgency to hook up with him. Tears begin to fall as Naoto realizes he's still just a child. As he tries to wipe them away, Satsuki curiously stays by his side. After calming down, Naoto walks alongside Satsuki, quietly confessing that he's been thinking about breaking up with Yukari, though deep down he admits he doesn't want to. Satsuki studies him carefully, noting that even though he's had several emotionally unstable days lately, today seems to be the worst of it. She decides not to push further and lets him wander with his own thoughts. Curious, she asks why they're walking in the opposite direction from his house. Naoto explains that he promised to buy ice cream for Suzu. Just then, they hear a car door open ahead of them. When Naoto looks forward, he sees Mio, her expression calm and unreadable as she meets his gaze. Before he knows it, Naoto ends up in her car, sitting stiffly in the passenger seat. Mio admits that she had asked a friend of Yukari's where she could find him. Her attention shifts towards Satsuki, and Naoto quickly explains that she's his childhood friend. Mio doesn't press the matter, though she admits she would have preferred to speak with Naoto alone. Satsuki, unwilling to step back, points out that Naoto looks genuinely afraid to be in Mio's presence, and she couldn't bear the thought of leaving him by himself. Mio remains composed, assuring them that she means no harm. She even offers to drive them to the supermarket to buy Suzu's ice cream, and afterward, drop them both home. With nothing else to say, Satsuki leans back and decides to nap, while Naoto silently prays for the ride to end due to the tension thickening around him. After the supermarket stop, Naoto finds himself outside the car with Mio. He stammers out an apology, insisting it was all his idea, but Mio quickly cuts him off, telling him not to lie. She already knows it was Yukari's idea, and she suspected Naoto would blame himself, which is why she sought him out to ease his guilt. Her words lighten the weight in Naoto's chest, and for a moment he allows himself to hope. He asks if it's really okay for him to keep seeing Yukari. Mio's reply is steady but unsettling. She says it's fine because Naoto is one of Yukari's precious friends. Naoto realizes instantly that Mio still doesn't approve of their relationship. When he presses, asking if she truly wants him to break up with Yukari, Mio answers without hesitation. As Yukari's mother, she insists it's her job to keep her daughter safe until she grows up. She explains that at their age, it's natural to have a strong sex drive, and it can't simply be bottled up. To her, the best way to protect Yukari's purity is to prevent their relationship from continuing or from reaching that point at all. Finally, she tells him to break up with Yukari, telling him that he can date her once Yukari is mature enough and if both of them still hold affection for each other. Eventually, Mio drops them off just outside of Satsuki's apartment. Satsuki wonders why Naoto insisted on being dropped off at her place instead of his own house. But Naoto reassures her that it's fine since their homes are very close to each other. Before leaving, he thanks Satsuki and promises not to involve her in any more of his problems. When he returns home, Suzu is furious at him for being late. To calm her down, he offers her the box of ice cream. Suzu momentarily considers forgiving him, but quickly decides otherwise, declaring that he isn't off the hook just because he bought her an entire box. Naoto crouches down to her height and pulls her into a hug, telling her that she is still the most important person in his life. In that moment, he realizes that he finally understands how adults feel when they want to protect their children. Yet he also admits that he has strange feelings he doesn't know how to deal with. Suzu, confused by his words, breaks free from his embrace and pats his head. She apologizes and assures him that she doesn't hate him and that she loves him very much. She then insists they both take their baths and get to bed early. After her bath, Suzu quickly falls asleep. Naoto checks his phone and notices several missed calls along with a message from Yukari. In her message, Yukari asks if he'll be in school tomorrow. After thinking for a moment, Naoto makes up his mind and replies, asking if they can skip school together and go on a date instead. Yukari immediately becomes flustered, her entire body language radiating excitement. She doesn't realize that Mio is quietly watching her from a small opening in her door. Meanwhile, Naoto recalls Mio's warning but decides that he truly loves Yukari and cannot wait until they are older just to be allowed to date her. A few days later, while waiting for Yukari at a fast food restaurant, he begins writing out his plans for the future. He notes that he wants to live with Suzu after graduation, but also remembers how Suzu had left her summer homework completely blank. He then writes that he promises to see Yukari every afternoon, making a note to ensure everything works out for them. Remembering how Mio had asked him to break up with her, he angrily scribbles down that he will never break up with Yukari. When Yukari arrives and sees him writing, she asks what he's working on. Naoto apologizes for taking her out to the same fast food place as before, but Yukari insists that it's fine since she's a big fan of the shakes. Naoto takes a moment to observe Yukari and notices she seems more dazzling than usual. Yukari admits she's been especially happy lately because Naoto has been asking her out every day. Naoto reassures himself that they are doing fine. Even if he only brings her to fast food restaurants, Yukari is genuinely happy. He convinces himself that their relationship won't become dangerous as long as they always meet in public places. His thoughts are interrupted when Yukari mentions that home dates are nice too since they don't cost money and they can relax. She adds that she and Mio are not on good terms. Still, Shigenobu once told her that as long as she and Naoto are doing well, she has nothing to worry about. Naoto realizes that despite everything, he hasn't updated Shigenobu at all. Meanwhile, Yukari continues to be blissfully happy, convinced that the only opinions that matter are theirs. She then suggests they try each other's drinks. They realize this is their first indirect kiss. It turns out that both drinks are the same flavor. The awkwardness embarrasses them, but they end up smiling, happy that their relationship is doing well. At work, Naoto notices Makina bossing him around as usual. She points out that he's been acting unusually cheerful over the past few days. Then, almost shyly, she asks if he'd like to hang out on their next day off. Naoto quickly scolds her, reminding her to focus on her track training or to ask out the boy she actually likes instead. Makina finds herself having a hard time explaining, but Naoto doesn't catch her shift in demeanor. Instead, he cheerfully wishes her luck in her studies, sports, and love life. Another day, Suzu goes off to play with Renan, and Naoto leaves Suzu a note telling her that dinner is in the fridge. Once the chores are finished, he prepares to head out. Before he can leave, Tamayo stops him. She questions his exam preparation classes, only to be shocked when Naoto admits he stopped attending. Naoto explains that he feels college isn't right for him and shares his plan to leave after graduating high school. He explains that he no longer wants to impose on Tamayo, so his aim is to become independent as soon as possible. Once he leaves, Tamayo plays with her cat, worrying that Naoto doesn't fully understand what independence really means. Later, at the usual fast food joint, Naoto sits down to jot more plans into his notebook, outlining the problems he knows he'll face. Yukari arrives and notices him so focused that he doesn't realize she's there. She peeks at his notes and sees that Naoto plans to take on more part-time jobs to help support Suzu. Leaning on his shoulder, she surprises him. Smiling, Yukari says she doesn't mind sitting at the counter since it makes studying easier. Meanwhile, Shigenobu is busy with his part-time job at a flower shop. He notices that Naoto's texts lately are always short, as if hiding something. He hears a customer asking for a potted plant and is surprised to recognize Mio. Having known her since childhood, Shigenobu quickly prepares her order. Curiosity gets the better of him, and he asks about her recent conversation with Naoto. Mio smiles faintly, saying he probably already knows. Shigenobu asks directly if Mio is against Naoto and Yukari dating because of him, then reassures her that Naoto is actually a good match for Yukari. Mio admits she does like Naoto, but explains that her concern comes from her role as a parent. She's aware this might damage her relationship with him since he could come to despise or fear her due to her recent actions. Shigenobu tells her that Yukari and Naoto will likely not break up since both are persistent when it matters. Mio agrees, but adds that this very persistence is what worries her. She fears they might make mistakes that will haunt them for the rest of their lives. Back at Naoto and Yukari's study date, Naoto struggles to concentrate because Yukari sits so close. He wonders if she's doing it on purpose, but when he glances at her, he notices a few of her buttons have come undone. Whispering the problem to her, he watches as she hurriedly covers herself. Her reaction convinces him that it wasn't intentional. Soon after, Yukari leaves for cram school. Naoto exhales in relief, convincing himself that nothing will happen and their relationship can continue as usual. He tells himself that seeing her smile is enough, but he accidentally scribbles other things he wants to do with her since they are in a relationship. Worried about seeming creepy, he tears out the notebook page where he scribbled down these feelings. He recalls Yukari's words about becoming greedy and realizes he is also growing greedy. Slapping his cheeks to refocus, he decides to head to work. Later, Yukari sits alone at the train station. She remembers Naoto's notes about getting more jobs and recognizes the effort he puts in just to see her every day. Wanting to match that dedication, she resolves to become a better girlfriend, wondering what she can do to make him happy. When Yukari returns home, she notices roses on the table. Mio tells her she bought them from Shigenobu's store, wanting to try taking care of roses again. Yukari realizes that she isn't supposed to act friendly with her mother just yet and quickly adjusts her tone. Mio teases her attitude, remarking that she already knows Yukari and Naoto are still meeting every day. As Yukari leaves the living room, Mio quietly tells herself that Naoto must be having a hard time. Heading straight for the shower, Yukari later notices several missed calls and messages from Naoto. In his message, he explains that he won't be able to see her tomorrow because Makina has an injury. Yukari immediately types out a reply, reassuring him that they can always meet the day after instead. She tries to hype herself up, determined to be a good girlfriend, without dragging Naoto down. Still, she admits to herself that it hurts not being able to see him tomorrow. The next day, Makina sits bored in her dorm room. She regrets not being able to attend work and laments that the campus is empty as well. Since her parents believe she's at training camp, going home isn't an option either. Thinking she should at least go for a refreshing run, she's reminded of her injury and sinks deeper into frustration. Tears well in her eyes, but just then, Naoto calls to check on her. Hearing the genuine concern in his voice, Makina's mood shifts. Realizing she can take advantage of his kindness without looking bad, she asks if he can come to her dorm, claiming her foot hurts too much and she needs help. Naoto visits Makina as promised and checks on her injury. Instead of telling him that she's fine, Makina tries to act seductively, hoping to get a reaction out of him. Naoto, however, assumes she's just feeling warm and starts looking for the aircon remote. When he finally spots it, he notices it lying next to one of her undergarments. He immediately scolds her for being careless, but Makina only gets more excited knowing he saw it. She tries to gauge if he's flustered, but Naoto appears completely unfazed, even a little irritated. Seeing her move so easily, he questions whether she's really in pain at all. He then asks why she was able to let him in so easily, considering it's a girl's dorm. Makina explains that the dorm is meant for athletes, so the school trusts that none of them have time to fool around with boys. Naoto finds it strange that she can still work despite claiming she's in training, but Makina deflects, insisting she's special, so she has time for both. To draw his attention away, she suddenly stands and clings onto his arm, asking if they can go out and spend some time together. Naoto notices she's acting odd, but assumes it's just because she's in pain. They head down to the track field. Makina looks thrilled to be there due to the open space, the lack of strict coaches, or judgmental teammates. Seeing her smile, Naoto comments that she must really love running. Makina pretends to agree, but when Naoto asks if she plans to pursue track as a career, she admits she's still deciding. She adds that she wouldn't mind becoming a housewife if she were ever proposed to while still in high school. Naoto tells her she's too young to be thinking that far ahead. Makina argues that as long as she's 16 and her partner is 18, marriage is legally possible. Curious, she asks Naoto if he plans to marry Yukari. Naoto hesitates, unsure of what to say, which makes Makina tell him that girls tend to think about marriage a lot. Hearing that, Naoto starts to imagine what married life with Yukari might be like. He admits that it's a possibility, but right now, Mio doesn't approve of their relationship. Makina frowns and asks what the point of dating is if Mio is against it. She complains that Naoto doesn't respect himself enough and wonders if he really loves Yukari, because if he truly did, he wouldn't be so insecure or care about what others think. Her words strike Naoto deeply. He lowers his head and admits that she's right. Love should be stronger than fear, and by doubting himself, he's been disrespecting Yukari's feelings. Makina feels confused since Naoto doesn't seem like he plans to break up with Yukari, so she suddenly announces that she'll go for a run to clear her head. However, the moment she puts pressure on her injured foot, she collapses to the ground. Naoto immediately rushes over and picks her up, insisting on carrying her back to her room so she can rest. Checking his phone, he realizes it's getting late and decides he should head home. Before he can leave, Makina grabs his sleeve and asks if he can visit her again tomorrow. He agrees, then finally leaves her alone to rest. Meanwhile, Shigenobu drops by Mio's place to deliver some liquid fertilizer from his grandfather for the roses she bought. Noticing a pleasant aroma, he asks if she's cooking meat and potato stew. Mio explains that Yukari is the one cooking this time, and that it should actually be edible because she's following the recipe Suzu gave her. She adds that Yukari has been learning all of Naoto's favorite childhood dishes to surprise him someday. With a sigh, Mio admits she wishes Yukari would just stay in the kitchen, so there'd be nothing to worry about. As Shigenobu watches Yukari's cheerful expression while she cooks, he feels relieved that things seem to be going well between her and Naoto. Meanwhile, Naoto walks home thinking about Makina. He knows she's lying about how serious her injury is, and some of the things she said still bother him. He pulls out his notebook and notices that all his future plans still revolve around Suzu, none of them mention Yukari. He realizes that marriage has never crossed his mind. At first he thought he was too young to consider it, but then he remembered that his parents were already together at his age. Feeling guilty, he wonders if Yukari has ever thought about marriage herself. He decides to call her, and is surprised when she picks up after just one ring. Yukari asks how his visit with Makina went, and he tells her that Makina seems fine now. But when she asks if anything happened, he suddenly grows tense before assuring her that he'll see her tomorrow. After they hang up, Makina's words about love echo in Naoto's mind. The next day, Satsuki receives a letter from Jin and Hiroko. She begins to worry about Naoto as she walks. Meanwhile, Yukari asks Naoto if he'll be visiting Makina today, but he tells her that Suzu and Renan are filling in for him so he can spend time with her instead. Naoto lowers his voice, remembering that they're still in a library, but Yukari reassures him that it's fine and that they can go out together since they don't have anything scheduled. She grabs his hands and Naoto asks if she has cram school. Yukari says she doesn't today, then tries to convince him to have her over. Naoto hesitates, reminding her that she has an early curfew and that Mio would never allow her to visit his place. Yukari presses her body against him and insists, saying she doesn't care what Mio thinks of them. Just then, her phone rings, but Yukari refuses to answer it. She already knows it's her mother calling. She admits that Mio probably found out she lied about going to cram school and confesses that she isn't talking to Mio anymore until Mio accepts their relationship. Naoto feels guilty knowing that their relationship is straining her bond with Mio. He urges Yukari to try and talk things out, but she ignores his request and simply tells him that she'll be coming over later. As she leaves, Yukari passes by the pool, trying to convince herself that she's doing all this for Naoto's happiness. She then notices Satsuki speaking with her PE teacher. From their conversation, it sounds like Satsuki will be leaving the school soon. When the coach leaves, Satsuki finally notices Yukari watching her. Nervous, Yukari asks if they can talk for a moment. Back in the library, Naoto opens his notebook to a page where he wrote that he would never break up with Yukari. The words make him uneasy. He thought he understood what he wanted and who his priorities were, but now everything feels uncertain. Meanwhile, Satsuki tells Yukari that she has to go home to her parents that day. Yukari is shocked and asks if she's already told Naoto about her moving, but Satsuki insists that Naoto has nothing to do with it. Yukari disagrees, saying that he does because she knows Satsuki is in love with him. At the same time, Naoto decides to visit Mio because he needs to talk to her. Back with Satsuki and Yukari, Satsuki decides to tell her where and when she'll be leaving. She leaves it up to Yukari whether she wants to tell Naoto her whereabouts before walking away. Meanwhile, Naoto and Mio stop by a donut shop to talk things over. Naoto asks if the real reason Yukari isn't allowed to see him is because Mio is worried that they might hook up. Mio confirms that he's right. Though nervous, Naoto admits that his parents had him while they were still in high school. People were against their relationship and things were difficult, but he didn't truly understand how hard it was for them until someone told him about it. He swears that he won't let Yukari experience what his parents went through if they continue seeing each other. He goes on explaining that while his parents didn't plan for him, his little sister Suzu was planned, making her the most loved in their family. He adds that Suzu is the most important person to him, so he won't do anything that might make her unhappy. Mio smiles and asks what he really wants to be with Yukari. Naoto hesitates, then says he wants to be with someone who knows how to put family first. He also admits that he feels guilty knowing he's the reason Mio and Yukari have stopped talking. He tells Mio that he's willing to be just friends with Yukari if it means repairing their relationship as mother and daughter. Mio giggles softly, telling him he's so honest that it's almost ridiculous, though in a charming way. She then tells Naoto that her curfew is at 6 p.m. and that Yukari's phone should always be reachable. Naoto can hardly believe what she's implying, so Mio makes it clear that she'll allow their relationship as long as hooking up is off the table. After Mio leaves, Naoto calls Yukari to tell her that he's just finished talking to her mother and wants to discuss it. However, Yukari quickly brings up Satsuki instead. Naoto immediately assumes Satsuki did something to her, but Yukari explains that Satsuki is switching schools. Naoto is shocked by the news, even more so when he learns that Satsuki plans to leave today. He tries to brush it off, saying it's just like her to disappear suddenly. Worried, Yukari asks if he's really okay with not getting to say goodbye. Though Naoto insists he's fine, Yukari decides to tell him which station Satsuki will be using to leave town. Before hanging up, she tells Naoto to meet her right after he says goodbye to Satsuki. Naoto looks down at his phone and notices a message from Yukari saying that she trusts him. Meanwhile, Yukari crouches on the ground, wondering why she told Naoto about Satsuki. All she ever wanted was to be Naoto's number one, yet here she is testing his feelings and Satsuki's, which would only bring trouble to their relationship. Naoto rushes through the station searching for Satsuki. He manages to catch up to her just before she steps onto the train. Satsuki sounds disappointed that he came, but quickly masks it by greeting him as if nothing's wrong. Naoto, frustrated, scolds her for leaving without saying anything again. The announcer declares that the train will be departing soon, and Naoto insists that she should wait for the next one so they can talk properly. Satsuki agrees, but then pulls him inside just as the doors close. Naoto finds himself on the train, staring at Yukari's message again. Satsuki asks if Yukari made him chase after her, but Naoto denies it, explaining that Yukari only gave him her location. He asks if she's really returning to her parents and if she's truly transferring schools. When she doesn't answer, Naoto brings up how she did almost the same thing 6 years ago. He tells her that people who consider themselves close should at least say goodbye properly. Hearing him call them close makes Satsuki feel comforted, and she leans on his shoulder to rest. When they arrive at the station, Naoto asks if someone's coming to pick her up, but Satsuki says no. Naoto notices that the area looks far from where they used to live and realizes he never actually knew where Satsuki's home was. Satsuki then says goodbye and asks if he's going back to Tokyo. But before she can walk away, Naoto grabs her hand and says he'll walk her home since she dragged him all the way here anyway. Satsuki suddenly breaks into a sprint and calls for him to follow. She leads him toward what appears to be a castle, making Naoto tell her to stop joking around. He decides to message someone but realizes his phone is missing. Satsuki calls the station's lost and found department, and they promise to contact her if it's recovered. She then tells Naoto to just go home. Naoto refuses, but Satsuki insists that she doesn't belong in his life, since Yukari is his love and Suzu is his most important person. Naoto argues that the two have nothing to do with this, he just wants to see her family and say